Hello. Let me get this one going. Right, come on in. All right, everyone's showing up. I like it when the class is small, but everyone's here. That's great. Nice to see you all. Some of you might know that I teach a class from 1 to 4:10, and then I start this one at 4:30. And I forgot to stop. And I kept teaching. And I'm like, please let me know. Because I taught until 4:20. And then someone said, I think you're going far. And I'm like, yes. And I had the alarm too, but I was just teaching and I forgot. So it's like, I got to help people remind me that I'm going overboard. Anyway, because I have what's that?
We
Yeah.
love your job.
I liked it. To me, I like people to understand what I'm teaching them and to do it. And so I just kind of finish the subject, but my alarm goes off and I'm like, yeah, shut up, alarm. And I keep going. And then I go, wait, that alarm was there for a reason. It was telling me I had to stop. But I just snoozed it, like don't snooze, pay attention. So anyway, finally someone did remind me, so I'm glad, or I would have kept going. So anyway, head over to the chat. Thanks everyone who already said hey ho on it. I'm gonna go ahead and say that myself. Good afternoon. And we're going to put in the where's here we go. The Padlet link for everyone to head over to the Padlet. You guys have been doing a fantastic job of posting your work. Here's a link. Okay. And I really appreciate that because it really makes things much more interesting when I get to see you guys apply the stuff. Got it. I hear you, Peggy. Thank you. Thanks for letting me know. Here's actually, here we go. Here's the Padlet. All right. So I really love, in the past, I had people always put their classwork, but now that I've started asking people to truly put, I've always asked people, invited people to put their homework, but now someone's talking in the background of someone's. I really love, in the past, I had people always put their classwork, but I've got like people to truly put, I've always. Something out there is repeating my words. Who can it be?
That's funny.
Okay, now it stopped. Okay. Sometimes I get this thing that's like a reverb, but it's actually 10 seconds later, everything I'm saying appears again. I don't know where it comes from. Sometimes people when I Google on a Google Chrome and on a Chromebook, sometimes I notice that happens, but if there's no Chromebooks, then I don't know where it comes from. Anyway, I really appreciate that you guys are posting files of your own and your own work, or like Ed did, which he's not here yet, but he practiced on files of my own, from class files. But that's really good. So first of all, Bob, why is that reverb happening? Who's it coming from? I need to see. Bob, I think maybe that was happening to you before too.
I don't know why I'm having trouble with my audio, so I think I'm good now.
I think so. Okay. And then by the way, you had to fix something.
Yeah,
By restarting it, it did work on yours. Okay. So I remember that. Okay. It did, right? Refix it after
yes.
you restart it. Okay, good. Great. So so over here, Nick, I appreciate that you took this photo and you did quite a couple of different things with it. On this one, I haven't yet really taught you all how to do composites. But Nick has taken this class before. He used the stuff we learned. He went to this little squirrel. He removed the background, and then he put the squirrel hanging out on this person's arm. And you're right, you know, if you were to want to make it actually more realistic, you might want and make the border cut out a little bit better, decrease the size, work on having a shadow. So it's not that easy to make a realistic composite. You need to have photos that match in the sense that if this squirrel's feet are hidden by grass, you'd be hard to make that feet look like it's holding on to the arm, right? Or something like that. So you have to pick and choose really well. But the technique of what you did is awesome. But yeah, the actual job of matching a placement of something that is from a totally different image is actually quite different. But yeah. So then you went ahead and did the whole like create an adjustment layer, which is the black and white one, and then use the brush tool to color in the strawberry. Now, you said, however, I had trouble using the selection tool to do this. Can you tell me what you meant by that? Because I mean, the brush is a great idea, but what you were trying to select it with what tool?
Well, we had kind of worked on selection methods in the last class.
Okay, the new
And
one. This,
it seemed like the brush was the easiest way to do it.
yeah.
So but I couldn't figure out how to do it well with any other method.
With any other. And basically, with the selection, I'm assuming you mean the selection brush tool, which is the one that we kind of worked on, the new tool that we worked on last week. And the only difference would have been to brush it first and then create the adjustment layer versus first create the adjustment layer and then use the tool. So it's just the order of the event, so to say, switches. But there's another adjustment tool brush that I'm going to teach you today. And that one works on top of everything that I've been teaching you. I don't know why I stopped the share. That was silly. Let me share again because we're not done. But yeah, great. And then here you went for that same photo again. And this time you use the sky selection tool, which I haven't shown in this class. I've shown it at other times. There's a tool that just does a really good of only isolating the sky. And you wouldn't be able to tell that this isn't, you know, that it isn't the original sky. It's very well selected. And then you change the color. Did you put in a new sky? It seems to be you changed the color because that sky to me seems the same as this one, only a different color. Or was this the altered sky as well?
The gray was the original.
Is the original? Okay.
Yeah.
So you altered it with maybe with the colorize or something like that.
Yeah.
And the hue saturation. Okay, great. And notice the other one, I knew what you had done, but this one I didn't because the layers are not there. So don't forget you guys to add the layers like you did here, because then here I saw that you made a mask and whatnot. So don't forget to do the screenshots with layers. That would be great. Then Ed is not here, so I'm not going to talk too much about his photos. But then Vera, are you here, Vera? Yeah, there you go. So Vera, you did a bunch of little tests here that I really appreciate. This one here, you showed how you used the select subject tool, which is the one that's in the contextual taskbar. And the comment she made is that not only did it select I mean, it's hard for the computer to know what to select when it's not very clear. If there's a person, it'll usually assume that the person's important. And in this case, it selected the person. You can see a little line around it, but it also selected one of the chest pieces, right? Maybe it thought it was the continuation of the leg or something. And so what you did here is you switched to a different tool, the quick selection tool, and then you use the option key, right, to deselect, and then ran it over that, and perfect. You have a great selection of the person. So great job. That's exactly the way to do it. Now, you didn't do anything with it, right? Yeah, I just see the selection. But then after that, you could have then created like a new layer or something. But the selection is the beginning, the most important part. And then you did two over here, which is to change the color of the fire truck. And in this one, it looks like you changed it in a destructive manner. I can't tell. but on the other hand, it looks red there. So I'm not very clear because in the first one, I do see here the color mask. So in this one, you said you changed this red play fire truck, but it still looks red to me. So was it pink before? Was it another color before? Because I do see the mask where I don't know if you guys can tell, but she's got the slides and the little
The original
post.
was red and the pink, I just assumed the slide should be pink. Maybe it's just faded with the sun.
Okay,
I
so
found
here,
it really difficult to get to the little edges. And
mhm.
by increasing it, I could just see the pixels and I could not, I was trying to use the brush. I
Mhm.
could not get to those edges accurately.
Yeah, and see, you guys, can you tell how pixelated this image is? I'm not sure if you can see it, but it's very pixelated. So I don't see really well what number it says here as far as, I think it says
12,000.
12,000. So you're very zoomed in. What that means that this image is very, very tiny. And if you were to see it 100%, it would probably be about, postage stamp size. So when you zoom in and to see it fill your screen, it looks pixelated and it's much harder to select because then there's no real straight lines, right? So what you ran across problem is true. And it has to do with pixelation. Hi, Odessa. Thanks for joining us again. Odessa was one of the ones that was in my class. And so she also stayed late like I did in the class. And so she's had barely any break as well. Anyway, so we're going to talk today about resolution and how you could have made this work better because it's such a tiny image that the only way to fill your screen was to zoom into the point that you're seeing just pixels. And then it's hard to find where to put that line because the lines of pixels are very squiggly. They follow a square line, right? So yeah, so here's the same image again using the selection brush tool this time to play anyway, the same thing, except for I don't see here the
That was
colors.
just the first try. I just wanted to show those are the brush strokes. And it
Oh,
shows you
it's the brush and then you
Yeah.
use the mask. Got it, because the
then the
pink.
next one, because I couldn't show it in both.
Got it, got it. And the reason I got confused is because it looks so purple, but that's because you probably changed it from the regular red because you couldn't see red over red. Got it. That's what I was like, wait, did you turn it red and now we can't see it? No, no, no. I understand now what you did. Okay, perfect. Cool. And then Bob did over here, Bob, you created a selection around basically you created you changed or altered the entire photo with a hue saturation tool in a really cool kind of little crazy way. And then you masked out this portion and you said, nope, I don't want it to affect this couple. So yeah, great use. If you can maybe also at some point start putting what tools you use, like maybe you used the brush tool in the mask, or maybe use a selection tool, that would be fun to know so as we talk about things. All right, and then here's where you were playing around with the tools to learn to use them, so that's great. And then I think that's it for, Ed, but he's not here, so Ed used the tool a couple of times. Ed used some generative fill, some stuff over here that teaches that completely replaced the background, so we're going to talk about that a little bit. And then down here, we have a fun little Peggy photo. No, that's not a photo, not Peggy photo, a photo that Peggy worked on. And so you mentioned that you used the select subject, but that it was hard because the background was very busy to select the kangaroo. And that's the limitation of the automatic tools, right? That when it's clearly a kangaroo jumping against the sky, so that's an easy selection. But when it's jumping amongst a bunch of brush or other kangaroos or stuff, then you went in and used the plus and minus, like shift and option key, to work in and out to refine the selection. For the most part, I can't tell because I don't see up close if maybe there's like a claw hanging out, if there are more or less claws or whatever. But sometimes If it's in the brush, maybe this one is on a piece of grass and you don't see it, you know, so who knows? Now, maybe generative fill could help out a little bit, but generative fill is really good to invent something totally new. It's hard to tell it, complete the claws of the kangaroo. That it's not able to do yet well, right? You can tell it, put a kangaroo against the sky and it'll give you a fake kangaroo. But if you were to say, fix the kangaroo feet, for example, no, it still can't do that. But yeah, great job and very interesting sky. And over here in the one that that Ed did, this is an example. If you guys look, this is an image that I have in our handouts, and it's all cliff, all mountain. And what he said is, get rid of the mountain and give me an cliff overlooking the ocean. And that's what he got, right? So you can invent something out of the blue, like a cliff generating the option, but it would have been much harder to say, complete the kangaroo paw, or in the case of the squirrel, right? Make the squirrel look like it's hugging onto the hand, like it wouldn't do that. But if you had generated from scratch a squirrel sitting on the guy's hand, that might have worked, but then that's not your photography, right? So that's like the whole drawing the line between what you want to do and what Photoshop can do and stuff like that. Anyway, great job. Down here, I saw also Odessa. I wanted to ask you a little bit about this one, because you used a bunch of generative fill here, and you were in the class last time when we did a lot of that. But it says here that you used it to remove the logo and generate the background. Since we don't see that logo in that background, can you tell us what this was originally?
I had my profile picture, a big circle in the center, and then it had
Oh,
an email address. It had my just information all through it, and it was such a beautiful picture. I wanted to restore it back without anything being there, and it did a really good job.
got it. So you had a circle here with a picture of yourself and then information like text. And you just use generative fill to say, get rid of that and
Yeah.
recreate the tree.
Angle did the lettering,
Perfect.
phone numbers. It did a good job. The other one, I was able to select object for the logo and get rid of it.
Perfect. So you guys see, she made 4 different versions of generative fill. One time addressed to the text and one to the logo, and then retouching and stuff. And yeah, that's great. Now it seems like I don't know if this is from our,
Yeah,
like, was it in the photo or is it just from the screenshot, right? Because it's possible that it was just a screenshot that had that
Could-
time there.
screenshot.
Got it. All right, wonderful. I think that's it for all of the photos that are for the people who are here and who are new photos. But then Sisambat made a bunch of different changes to this one over here. You made one. Where was the one? Sisambat, I thought you had posted something else. Where did I see the other one that you had posted? Oh, I see you posted some stuff there, but I thought you had posted another one that was quite different. No, did I? I saw somewhere else another one you'd put. Okay, these I see you're posting right now. So let's quickly look at them. I haven't seen these yet. So,
Are you
okay, so
referring
here,
to the Illustrator class, the Virgin Mary?
say that again.
The Virgin Mary in Illustrator?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, because that's an Illustrator class. Okay, because in the Illustrator class, you created a Virgin Mary. That's where I knew I had seen something else from yours. Okay, because he's also in my Illustrator class. So in case you're interested, this is what I was talking about. He created this piece of art there in the Illustrator class. That's why I was like, wait, I saw something of yours. Okay, got it. And then here you've been using some of the different tools to change hue saturation on different things. So awesome. Masking, make it one color and then mask it out. And then what's this one? Select subject and mask. Oh, not mask layer, layer mask. Change the words around. Okay, that's perfect. But the layer mask is what we call this thing that cuts things out. Okay, so it's the layer mask versus the mask layer. All right. Good job, guys. Good tries, good test. Did I miss anything or anyone other than Ed who's not here? I think I got all of the new stuff that you guys did. Let's head over to Bridge. Oh, there comes Ed. I was just saying Ed's not here, so we're not going to talk about his stuff. And here comes Ed. All right, so I did update to 2025. So there are, you know, how last class I still had 2024. So I haven't looked at all the different, all the new things, but I have looked at some of the new things. So hold on, I'm putting in this, but I'm going to spend a little bit more time before I do all of the new stuff. Hi, Ed. We just kind of
There,
finished.
sorry I'm late.
No, that's fine. We just actually finished going over everything that everyone did. And I was about to say, well, I'm not going to talk about Ed's because he's not here. And I literally pressed the bell button and you came in. So I just had shown a little bit about the generative fill that you did here. So I already talked about that one a little bit. And then the rest of what he did here was using images to just try some of the tools. He knows a bit of other stuff, right, that we might not have done. So he knows about blending and stuff like that. So he created this fence here. He created a vibrance and a blend effect. So when he says blend effect, I haven't taught you blend effect. To add on top of the hue saturation layer, but I'm not seeing here. This is the only thing I was going to
I
say.
screwed that up. Don't.
Oh, no. Okay. Because when you said you had an adjustment layer, this isn't an adjustment layer. So it's like you
Actually, that
copied
is,
and
that's a
pasted.
vibrance adjustment layer right
But you
there.
got rid of the mask then.
Yeah, I don't know why, but
Ah.
then the blend is here. So I don't, it did
Got
something
it.
weird.
It basically looks almost as if what happened is that it got copied onto that, and like this is
Yeah.
a pixel layer laying on top of that one, and then you're blending it, which makes sense because you blend pixel layers, right? So like what's missing here is the original
Right.
adjustment layer, but then you got pixels with the adjustment added to it, and then you did a blend, which is down here. Blending is something where you two layers blend into each other in one way or another, and there's all these different modes where you make what's on top and in the bottom merge in such a way that, in this case, he got this heavy burn effect on it. Okay, so I'll show you where the blend layers are in a minute. And then the rest of what he did is different filters. So if you read this and it says a photo filter is one of the many adjustment layers, right? So he used an adjustment layer called photo filter, and then he added a magenta filter onto this one, and that's what the adjustment layer photo filter looks like. And if some of you guys are from photography, you might know that in the past we would put these filters that are a certain color and tie them up, you know, screw them onto your lens, and then you'd see through and everything would look more warmer or colder or whatever. And that's why the adjustment layer is called photo filter, because if you didn't do it on camera, then you can do those. And the filter names are the ones that are equivalent to the kind that you buy for your lens, right? So if you don't know about photography, you're like, what's the name of this filter for? Let me just really quickly show you that. If I open this and I try to put in an adjustment layer, that's here. It's called photo filter. See that? Then the filters have the numbers of the filters that if you were to buy a lens for your camera, you would buy an 82 filter or an 81 filter, and it would be a warming filter, a red filter, whatever. And then he added a magenta one, right? And so that's kind of the one he got. But the thing about that is that notice that it's not much. It didn't turn everything magenta. A lens that's magenta that you put in front of a lens just makes everything look a bit pinker, right? But it's not the same as coloring things magenta. That's why it's the photo filter. So sometimes looking at different ones that you're going to learn to do just helps you understand what they do. So this one is like brilliantly violet, but it just made things go a little bit purpler, or a little bit warmer. It makes things yellower, right? So it's just like when you put on pink glasses, some fake fancy party pink glasses, the world doesn't go flat pink. Everything just looks like it's a little bit pinker, and that's what photo filters do, right? So that's what that thing do. But you could also make it a bit more dense or less dense. So if you go over here and put the magenta on, and then you make it really dense, then you get to the point where finally everything does look very magenta. Does that make sense? You choose how intense that filter might be. So anyway, play around with some of these others just to know how they work, because they're fun. I usually teach about 3 or 4 of these, depending on what it is that I have a chance to teach, which direction I go. But I wasn't going to cover photo filter, so I'm just showing it you really quickly, given that he mentioned it. That's how he made that window. And then I think you had one more that I already talked about, which is the generative fill. We already talked about that one. So I'm gonna skip on it and I'm gonna get into us doing new stuff. All right, so bridge. And by the way, this is the original of the one that Ed took and said, show me the ocean and generative fill. And that's why you saw a cable car flying over the ocean and the cliff. Okay, so that's the one that he started with. All right. Let's see. I'm gonna go over here to Photoshop and I'm gonna close this one because I didn't want in particular to use this image. I was just giving the example of the photo filter. And back to bridge. Now, there was a specific question. Hold on, back here. Someone had asked me something that I said I would explain in class. Does anyone remember me saying? Well, there's one more thing, which is the select sky that I wanted to talk to people about, but then the rest was just how to make things more realistic. I don't think there was any specific other question, right? No. Okay. So, so let's go over to bridge and I'm going to show you another tool. That's new and it's also a brush and it's called very similar to what we've been doing. And we're going to spend only a little bit of time on this one, but it's basically, again, feeding from everything we've been doing and learning. So just to make it a little bit different, let's go to this image that we haven't used yet, which is the fisherman's hut. Fisherman's hut. And if you go by alphabetical order, there it is, the fish right after the elk. Let's double click on it. It's a JPEG again. And it opens straight into Photoshop. And I keep saying that because many times we use a lot of raw images and then it opens to a different area first. But this time we're just basically working on JPEGs. So up until now, I've shown you how to open the adjustment layers from here. So say that I would now choose a hue saturation adjustment layer. Nothing happens until I move something around, right? And then remember, if I want only one part to not be affected, I would get the brush, right? The brush tool, and I would put the opposite color of ink. So if this is white, I would go with black. And then I would say, don't affect this or don't affect that. So this is just a little bit of a review, right? So I'm like, don't do that, don't do this. So we create the layer and then we modify it. Or plan B, and this is what Nick did, the thing I taught you the other day was to go to the selection brush. And the only difference is that instead of first making the adjustment layer and then making your adjustment, in this case, you first select with this brush, and this is what you were saying you're having a bit of an issue with. You select, so this is a selection. This is not changing it into seafoam green. This is just the fact that I am making my seafoam green be the color of my overlay, right? And I very abruptly. Then when that is already selected, then I would go and I would say, okay, give me a hue saturation of that area. And then I would change only that area. Does that make sense? Right? So it's like just a different way of doing a selection before I make the adjustment layer, right? So those are the two things that we've been practicing. And then the last thing we practiced was to, again, just grab a piece of something with that, or what we did the other day was like that. Again, select it first, then make your adjustment. Okay, so that's what we've been doing. That was just a little mini, really quick review to now show you a completely different tool, which if you head down here, it's hovering between the drop looking thing and the lollipop looking thing. And it's a new tool and it's called the adjustment brush tool. Tell me if you found it. And if you did find it, when you hover over it, it doesn't have a particular shortcut. It's called the adjustment brush tool, which is like, wait a minute, you have the brush, we've been using the brush. Then we have the selection brush, right? And then you have the adjustment layers. And so this is a combination of them all with the name. It's adjustment brush tool. Psi, right? Looks like we should have numbers to them already at this point because the names are overlapping. All right. Did y'all find it? Give me a yes if you found the adjustment brush tool. Could be that you don't find it, that you need to add that tool if you haven't yet. So Odessa, Rebecca, Vera, do you find it? Bob, you don't see it? Okay. First of all, if we head over here to the tools, I'm in what mode am I in right now? I think I'm in essentials. I told you guys to be in photography mode. So in photography mode, if I were to reset, does it show there? Yeah, it shows in all of them. So it's down here, except for in the photography mode, it's not between the teardrop or the blob. It's, let me just, I keep moving that over there when what
I found it.
you found it right there? Okay. So it just, when I was in essentials, it was between other stuff. Now it's there. Okay, you all found it? Vera, you got it? Nope. All right. All I know how to do is tell you to maybe share your screen because there's no shortcut to it. So I can show you where it is if you share your screen to find it, but otherwise
Diane,
normally it's
shortcut says it's B as in Bravo.
B is the brush.
Oh, isn't that what we're supposed to be?
Nope, we're looking for an adjustment brush tool. And I see that you don't see it there. So go ahead and go up to your screen, into your workspaces. Nope, not there. Go up to the workspace because if not, you might need to add the tool. Go all the way up to the far right to your workspaces, Vera. And let me see what workspace you're in. You're in photography and you already reset it, I'm sure, at other times. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. If you don't see the brush, which I don't, and if you don't either, Odessa, someone who doesn't find it, let's head over to your tools again. And I'm gonna show you how to add tools that are maybe missing. So see these three little dots way at the bottom? Yeah, so in this three
Diana?
little dots, what?
Isn't she in 2024? And I don't think it was in 2024, was it?
Oh, wasn't it?
Yeah, I have it.
I thought it was a new thing. It was-
No, I think it's in 2024.
Okay, all right.
And let me see, I don't know, anyone else is in 2024 and has it? Nick, say something about you guys, what are you using?
I think I didn't download the new thing. I think it's here. I have it.
What does it say up there? If you're in a Mac, it would say Photoshop 2024. PCs don't say that, but up there at the top of your thing, it would say what Photoshop you're using.
I'm
Can you lose it?
2024 and it's there.
Yeah, it's there. Yeah, it was there before. The adjustment brush tool existed. It started in 2024, but it was there. So if you don't see it here, and I can't, it's so small, I can't read to see if this is one of them, then you can go to edit brushes, edit tools right there. Yeah. And then over here, you have to search for the brush and let's scroll up and down. I think it shows up in its own.
The toolbar is collapsed. I opened it and then I found it.
Not brush tool. You opened it and it was, there it is, adjustment brush tool. So click on that and I believe, oh, I see, it's so tiny, I can't see. Hold on, let me zoom in a little bit because I can't, there, I have to see it. Okay, so now you can drag it, grab it and drag it over to your brushes and drop it somewhere. Like go move it up and drop it in a place where you, not in the three dots, that's where it's coming from. Drag it up to some other spot and put it in there. And yeah, keep going. It's not, you're not in there yet. Yeah. Maybe move the whole box, maybe move the whole window over to your tools a bit more because you're so far. Yeah, and then you'll grab what you want and you drop. I'm trying to find one that I don't have that I could do that with. You have it in the toolbar.
It's already in the toolbar. It's just
You have it in the,
collapsed. You have to
yeah, you're,
expand the toolbar and she'll
you have
find
it, you're right. I'm looking for where it is. Yeah, the fact that it, I'm gonna mute you. Yeah, so you already have it. The fact that it's on the left side means you already have it. Now look and notice that you have it in between. It's telling you where it is. It's right under the history brush tool and above the eraser tool. So
Here.
there it is. No, click on that. That's, Yeah, hover over it. Just hover over the tool. You're above it. No, that's the history brush. So one under that one. Click on it. And yeah, that's the one. Somehow you don't have the little tooltip showing up. Go ahead and cancel from here. Yeah. And now go ahead and hover over. There it is. There it is. That's the one. Okay.
It,
You got
I
it.
can, it open? Okay, I guess.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
one. That's the one. All right, cool.
Thank you.
So let me just share again because I wasn't explaining that really well. When you add tools, I'm going to go to this little area where you add tools. If you add a tool and go to edit toolbar, these are the tools you have. These are the ones you don't, right? So say that you want to add one of these, want to add the red eye tool, I would just take it in here and I would drop it in there. And I added it to the group of selection, which doesn't make sense. But if I go to my group of selections over here, I'll find it under the selection tool brush and all of that. If I don't want it, I can drag it over here and it leaves. So when you want something on its own to hang out on its own like that one, you need to grab it and put it in between, not in the box, but right in between there. So now the red eye tool is on its own. And if I look between those two, I'll find that I put the red eye tool right there in between the selection and that. So that's kind of how you would use that. Or I'm going to take it out again and it's gone. Okay. So this is how you add or take away tools from your toolbar if they're not there. But if they were on the left side, which hers was, then it was already there. Okay. Bob, did you find it now?
Yeah, I'm good to go. Yes.
Okay,
Thank-
great. All right, so I'm going to clear your guys' answers. Now everyone has the tool. All right, so what is this magical little adjustment brush tool? It's kind of everything we've been talking about all in one. So watch. I select it first. Before I do anything, you make it bigger or smaller, just like we did any brush. As soon as it has the name brush in it, you make it bigger or smaller by going into the bracket keys and making it bigger or smaller. And then there's another way to make things bigger or smaller, but since I haven't yet decided what I'm going to do with this tool, I'm not going to show you that. That's why I prefer this way as a starter. And then the other shortcut that I'm going to show you is the way. But if I try to do the other one right now, I'm going to begin doing stuff. And first, I want to go up here to where it says adjustment. Which adjustment am I going to choose? And if I click on this list, does this look familiar? These are the names that we had down here, remember? So let's choose, and just because we know this one so well by now, not because it's the only one you can use, but that way I don't have to choose, I don't have to explain the tool. Let's choose the hue saturation tool, which we know changes colors, right? Then I'm going to go to this house and I'm going to paint this house a little bit. And you're like, well, I don't see anything happening. What's happening there? And it's because I'm painting it, but I haven't changed its color yet, right? So now I can change its color. If you notice over here, a hue saturation layer got created. Now let me start all over again. I first start drawing something. And when I look over here, a brightness contrast adjustment layer appeared. I'm going to get rid of it. Now I'm going to choose the photo filter that we did that I showed you with Ed, photo filter. And then I start using it, and then I can change here what I did. The whole point is that if you know how to do everything I taught you, you might not need this. It's just one more way of making adjustment layers. Some people, you know, selecting, I guess, seemed to be a problem for people who are new to Photoshop. So this is what they came up with. The default tool is always brightness contrast. So if you don't choose one, that's the one that'll come up. I'm going to go with black and white now, right? And nothing happens yet. It's the moment I click on the houses and start painting that my mask begins to happen. And that area that I painted is turning black and white. You see that? And then I can go over here and I can make it darker or lighter or whatever I want to do. but the mask got made for me based on my painting. Okay? Tell me if that makes sense, if it worked. Not saying if you prefer it over any other, just is it working? And basically, you choose the one you want. So again, I'm going to go to the simplest one, which is hue saturation. Nothing appears here yet. I need to put hand on, begin, and then the layer appears. And now I can go, well, that's barely any change. What change do I want? There, I wanted to make it red, right? So then I move on the adjustment, right? So if I just, and then I can just paint it on, and I can make this brush much bigger and say, I just wanted to have a much brighter blue for my sky, you know, or something like that. So then I can just do that. Now I have a little artificially bright blue sky, right? And then I go, I don't want it to be blue. I want it to be yellow or green or whatever I want it to be. So nothing new as far as skill. It's still an adjustment layer. It's just a new way of making them. And yeah, I can see how it simplifies if you don't want to learn how to do adjustments and selections and stuff like that. When all you want to do is you have a landscape and you just want to change an area of something, you want to lighten or darken something. Maybe I want to lighten, I'm going to go to brightness and contrast, and maybe I want to lighten a little bit this part of the water. Then I made a little area, and then I just go over here and I lighten it or I darken it, right? It's not very accurate. It's a brush after all, and you can't even see it when you start. You have to first do it and then begin to see it. So, you know, for what it's worth. Now notice that when I painted the water here, a little bit, just abrupt, very, very abrupt brushing, and then I lighten it, that might be something I want my water to be very shiny instead of how it came. That was pretty dark, you know, so anyway. And then I turn it on and off, and that's what I get. So nothing necessarily new, other than a new way to make them. Yes.
There is a neat little trick on that one, which is if you go to the right icon on the toolbar just beyond the pressure point,
This one.
click on that, and it allows you to do it by objects.
Yeah, so whenever, thanks for pointing that out. I'm going to keep going. So here's the thing. Remember that last week, last class, I showed you the different automatic selections. So look at the little icon, right? And sorry, I didn't mean to do that. But when you click on the object selection one right there, the one that looks like an X, remember it would kind of select things that seem to be, you know, a possible object, right? So that same shape, you got to become like familiar with them. So now if you go to the adjustment brush, what's the name of it again? A brush adjustment brush tool, right? Then you have a choice of how to modify it. So again, I'm going to go with hue saturation. And then I was using this one, which is me drawing it. But if I use that one, which means object selection, right? So that's the, remember, object selection, right? I can turn off the pressure point object selection. Then I can go over here and I can say, get me this boat. And so a lot of this boat is white. If I do that, it's made a mask of the boat. And then I change the color of that boat, right? So I'm going to leave it some obnoxious color so you know that it's happening. Or I use, again, I select again the object. I have to reselect that. And then I have to go back to my background. And I reselect that. And this time I want all my sky. Boom. Click on the sky. My mask, my sky got selected, and I can darken it or brighten it. Let me give it. Now it made it. So that's for my boat. And this is for my sky. But each time you do it, you have to reselect what filter you want, right? Go back to hue saturation. Then you have to select the object thing again. Then you go over here and you say, okay, now I can't say one house. This reads it as all houses, but it is reading the boats individually, kind of, you know. pretty well. Well, as like that middle boat there is not recognizing as a boat. But it, you know, as good as that tool is at recognizing things like this little house, it's not recognizing. But I could select all of the mountains, which I doubt. No, yeah, there you go. I'm gonna make the mountains bright green.
You
Yeah,
can't,
fake
you
green.
can select the separate house and stuff. When you're in the thing, it's showing you that you can create a rectangular thing that if you do for just like the left house, if you want it,
Yeah, like
build a
that one.
box there, it will actually then select that only that house.
You know what? You're right. I hadn't noticed that. That's the tool. I've always taught you in that tool that works, but I didn't notice that it would work here too. So remember you guys, the object selection tool, I told you that it either does big things or you're supposed to, remember we did last week, you're supposed to surround the shape you want. And then it does its best to select it. So what Ed just said works here too. And I'm glad you showed that to me. So if I'm in the adjustment tool and I choose the object selection tool and I want only one of the houses, I need to select that house like that with that tool in hand. And there it goes. It went and it added that. So I'm going to go over each time you have to choose that again, right? It turns itself off otherwise. Do I have that? Yeah. I'm going to turn this on again. And this time I'm going to choose this one. But when I do that, it selected it, but it added it to the same one that I had. It didn't create a new one. So if I want to create a new one, you kind of need to go and delete, you know, select the new one again. Select your background so it knows that that's where you want to add it to. Select, I haven't taught you levels yet. So which one? Those are mainly the ones I've been teaching you. So let's go back to saturation. And then choose, let's see, that house. It thinks for a bit of a minute, it chooses the house, and then I get to move it around. And for the most part, as long as it recognizes it, it does a pretty good job. If it doesn't recognize it, like that little semi boat in the middle, then you have to resort to all the other stratagems that we learned last week. If this worked for you, if it's good, everything is wonderful, then give me a yes. If you have questions and you need me to answer some of those things, give me a note. You might want to give a little screenshot of this. It's kind of hard to screenshot the tool you're using, but if you include this thing here, then we'd know, right? This top part in the screenshot, then we'd know that's what you're doing. And then over here, make sure you capture that tool so that it's black, and then do that. And it'll be small, but at least it'll show us which tool we're using. And then when you post it, let me give you the link in the chat. Then you can, there we go. So then you can post over here by the way, those of you who are on a Mac, posting is really easy. If you're seeing your background and like this is the one I just made, I can just drag it over here and then that's it. Now I can just write my name and I can just say that this was the new, why isn't my screen not right? New adjustment brush tool. Select the brush, then select which adjustment you want to make, then paint or select object finder, so to say. And then finally move around the choices to change color or tone or whatever it is that you're changing. There we go. That's the way to do it. All right. I'm not seeing any red, any no's. So again, imagine how hard it would have been to explain all of this to you if you didn't have all that knowledge behind you, right? But now that you do have all that knowledge behind you, then suddenly this one makes sense to you. Different ways of doing the same thing. I would appreciate if someone tries to do something reasonable and real to some photos. And this is really good for things like landscapes or whatever, places where you want to do brush on general corrections for the brushes. And then with the object finder, you can do as much as you can to find it, the shape, but then don't forget, say that I wanted to do this little house here, which I did, but then I look at it and I go, oh, but I didn't want this to go green, or I didn't want the bright roof to go green. So you always have the option, and this is crucial, to go back into the mask, use your regular brush tool with the B, right? And go in, and I'm going to make it a bit smaller, and then I'm going to say, I don't want this, so you choose black or white here, and then you take the effect off. So the first thing we learned, which was how to affect your mask, still applies here. So say I didn't want that effect to go onto the trim of the house, and I didn't want it to go onto the roof. So now, even though the tool did the mask, then over here I went overboard, so I switched back to black and I give it again the color, right? And that green color for the hills is killing me. So let me, no, it wasn't that one, which was the hills. Oh, it's this one. Just that the hills and the house got done in the same one. Okay. So then I'll just work the mask. Okay. Always work the mask. If it went too far, too little, too much, if this edge is not good, go into the mask and keep adjusting the mask. All right. So anyone go into the mask, you guys, and black or white to add or take away part of what we did. Like this boat here, I wanted to change that to green, but I didn't want the bottom to look purple. So I go to the mask, select the mask, and then let me zoom in. A bit too much, select the mask. And if you don't know if it's black or white, one thing you can do is just start painting. And if nothing's happening, you know you got the wrong one. Or you look over here and you go, well, nothing's happening to the rest, but the boat is changing and the boat is white. So that means I need to go to black, right? And remember the X key gives me the black. And then I go back here and I paint the boat again because I didn't want the boat to turn purple. I only wanted the inside to turn green, but I'm happy with all the other stuff to be the original colors. So that is the object finder found the entire boat. But if I only wanted the top of the boat, then I'm going to have to go into the mask, right? And fix the extra color that I didn't want. And that worked pretty well. Okay. I'm going to save this and put it away because we've done so much of this whole thing that I don't want to keep working on it too much more. I'm going to say Fisherman's Hut, and then I'm going to add adjustment brush. I think it was called the adjustment brush tool, they called it. And then I'm going to say save. Make sure, is that the name? Adjustment brush tool. Yeah. It used to be easy to remember one or the other, but now with the word adjustment brush tool, it's just too many of the same name, driving me a bit crazy. But anyway, and when I'm done and you've done a screenshot and when you've posted it in Padlet, let's save and then close it and go back to Bridge. All right. So that was all fine and dandy for adjustment adjustment tools. Let me actually, one more thing, hold on. I want to assign you guys a homework. A few of you guys did it, so I'm going to write it in right now. I keep teaching you the hue saturation because it's the one that I'm really trying to teach you a tool, so I don't want to go deeper into the others. But I want you to challenge yourself to try at least 5 of all of these, right? Because there's a ton of different ones. And you might click on one that's so different that you have no idea what it's doing. Then maybe you want to look it up a little bit and do a Google search and figure out how to work it. I want you guys to skip out of a lot of these and learn some more so that you can, get a better grasp on what a huge amount of choices there are here to do things with your tools, right? So maybe try exposure level curves. I do manage to teach a few more of these sometimes, but this time I'm going to go in a different direction. So it's up to you to learn a few more, but I do want to see them posted here and to tell me which ones you're trying out with. Okay, so I'm going to start already with today's homework, and then I'm going to feed into it. Day 4 homework. And the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to say, try out at least 5 new adjustment layers, types, I guess. Okay, and I don't care what tool you use to get all of the and pin it. So it'll be at the top. I don't care which of the many versions of tools that I told you to create the masks, and I want you to do that. And the one thing that we haven't done enough of is, and let me go back here, is make, so good thing I forgot. And then make sure to use the brush tool with black or white to make corrections, let's call it, in the mask itself. So just practice that, because those are the 2 most important things you need to know, to make your selections and then to modify the mask. All right. I want to go in, I have 2 things I want to go into cover today. I want to change subjects. So if there's any other questions about all of these adjustment layers, I want you to practice and bring them to class, either because you write them here in the Padlet, you ask me your questions, and then we talk about them at the beginning of class next week, or, you know, you ask me in class, but I want you guys to practice so that you have questions, okay? All right, bridge. Now, not all or many of the things that we can do in Photoshop that could only be done in Photoshop before now can be done in Camera Raw. So let me explain a little bit about Camera Raw. I'm not going to do a huge Camera Raw class today. In fact, I'm going to focus a little bit on something else, but I do want to explain that there are some, let me find which raw images I might have brought here. Here's a raw. So how do I know that when something is raw? I look at the extensions. So this is a JPEG, this is a PSD. PSD is a layered file, a PNG, a JPEG. These are, and then I look over here and it says DNG. A DNG is a type of extension that is a raw file. Now, here's another one. Here's another DNG. That's a raw file. Is that all I brought? I thought I had put 3. Here's another one, a DNG. But DNG is not the only type of extension that is here's another DNG. Looks like this time I only put DNGs. That's because lately all the ones that I'm doing come from phones or downloads, and when you download them, you get BNGs. Here's another one. Yeah, so they're all DNGs. You could have other extensions. So if you own a Canon camera, you might get an extension called CR2. If you own a Nikon, you might get an extension called NEF. So you'll learn each camera maker supplier makes its own extensions. And it doesn't matter too much to explain the difference between one and the other. DNG is generic. It's the Adobe extension. All right. And so for those of you who have never opened DNG, some of you haven't, let me just show you the difference. If I double click, let me go to one that has some color. I think I had a DNG over here that had some color, which is the one that I just set up here. It was a DNG. ARG. Oh, come now. Let me just go sort by file type, because otherwise I'm having to. So here they are, AGIC. These are all DNGs. Okay, so here's one that has a bit of color. So I'm going to double click on this one. It's a DNG. And when it opens up, it's not even in Photoshop. It looks very different. How you get a raw file, you need to have a camera that is capable of shooting raw files. If you guys have a DSLR and it's relatively new, it can probably shoot raw files. If you have an iPhone that's relatively new, an Android that's relatively new, all of those can shoot raw files. And what does it mean to be a raw file? It means that it's not compressed. Now, today we're going to be talking about that in particular. I'm going to focus on compression and resolution. I'm going to do a lot of work on that. But I've never really shown you how to exit and finish files here in RAW itself, which is this area over here that you're going to work with. It's something I haven't shown in class. So when we get around to that, I'll show you that. But the reason I'm bringing you here really quickly, for those of you who've never seen the RAW engine, this is a RAW file. Then when you want to make all the similar changes to what I just did, like if I were to go over here to color, I have something called saturation. This is only saturation. Where's you remember we had hue saturation? Well, this saturation is about darkening and intensifying or lightening the color, but it is not the same hue saturation we had before. It's just saturation, okay? And then you have the vibrance that we did have as an adjustment layer, and it does vibrance. So some of these things are similar. But then to work on color, like the hue saturation did, you would have to go over here to color mixer or color grading. They're two different ones. But if I grab the reds over here, it lets me work on saturating the reds or on changing the hue. Okay, so anything that used to be red, I can make it be more pinkish, more orange, like I can work on stuff like that. Now, I'm not going to get into these details right now. You can do luminance, you can do a bunch of different things all together. To change colors, you would go into color mixer right there, and in the, not color mixer, color grading, you can also go in there. And you can change over here the colors and stuff. So I can make those different colors. So there's a lot of different things that you can do. You can do it to colors, to tones, all of this. And I'm not showing you right now what and where. I'm playing around with stuff and just marking things and changing things and da-da-da. Because the whole point that I'm trying to tell you right now is that anything you do in here isn't done on adjustment layers, okay? We were lightening and darkening photos with adjustment layers. We were changing colors. We were doing all this stuff on adjustment layers before. When you do them here in Camera Raw, you are doing them to the image itself. And we can do some selections and some masking. I'm not going there right now. So we could have selected only this door or only the bricks. We can do that in here. But when I'm done, and I say done, and I'm going to do that. Go back to bridge. My bricks that used to be bright red now are kind of dark orangish, but it happened to the whole file. There's not one layer in Photoshop that will do that. I'm going to double click on it again. And instead of saying done, I'm going to go to open. And this is just a demo, okay? So now I'm going to open it in Photoshop. It's happened to the whole file. There's nothing I can turn on and off. You see that? So at the file itself, I can keep changing. But once I open it in Photoshop, this is pretty much destructive. And I'm not going to say destructive because you always have the original file in the RAW. But this is it. This has been changed. Now it's not that brick red. Now it's orange. And this is where you're starting from. And if you want to change this in any way in Photoshop, you would have to do it with adjustment layers. Maybe you can try to get another color here. Maybe you'll get it blue or whatever. I'm just, driving crazy. And oh, come on. Where's my mouse? Maybe you want it blue. This you can turn on and off and keep moving like before. But the stuff you did in RAW is all here and it's now unchangeable. The bridge version, the DNG version, I can always keep opening in RAW. Now I'm in RAW again, and I can go back and change everything again. I can just make the whole thing disappear and start all over, okay? I can go and just say, no, I don't want any of this, and I want to change and make everything be the same and be the normal again and stuff like that.
Can you show us that one more time? How did you get this photo on Photoshop? It keeps
After raw, after I make my raw changes, whichever change I made, right now I did that. If I say done, I'm done with it. Nothing happens. If I say open, it opens in Photoshop. Yeah, that's fine. So now it opened in Photoshop, and see, this is Photoshop, but my entire background is this new color. That's it. It's not like I can turn it on and off anymore. Once it comes in from raw, it's kind of done. That said, there's a raw filter inside of Photoshop where you can apply it and turn it on and off. But right now, this is pretty much, again, I want to call it destructive because I can go back to the other one and change it and open it again. But this one here is fixed in time. This one, I can't go back and get the red brick color. Okay. Yes, Nick?
What's the advantage of using raw instead of just doing it starting in Photoshop?
Oh, there's so many ways of doing things. I'm not going to say that there's one fixed way of doing things, but in raw, you can do a ton of things at the same time faster than what you would do with adjustment layers. So say I open this one again, since it's a DNG, it opens in raw. Let me go ahead and I went back to defaults. I just deleted all the stuff that we were in. I'm back to the original one here. I could deal with light, color, effects, curve. I can deal with a ton of things all at once in this image and without even thinking of layers. And for many people, this is the way to get your photo looking as good as you can without going into the nitty gritty of the details. And then you go, okay, what can Photoshop do better? And then you open in Photoshop and you keep working on it in Photoshop for the details. So this is great for things that are wrong or things that you just want to enhance all at once. You can mask now. You couldn't mask before, but you can mask. You can now go ahead and say, I just want to make the sky lighter, the house brighter, the dark, da, da, da. And then when it all is looking okay, you go, oh, but you know what? I might want to, in particular, add more leaves to that tree that's looking a bit too thin. Well, you got to go to Photoshop to do that, right? Or whatever else that you're going to do in Photoshop. Layers, combination, combo, all that kind of stuff can only be done in Photoshop. But when it's working on the actual image, you can't bring anything in extra or take away anything from this one. It's got to be on the actual image. There's no adding or taking away anything from it. There's just fixing, so to say, or enhancing, because some things aren't wrong. You just want to enhance them. That's all. You want to add more contrast. It's not that something was wrong, but you want to make it a bit better. You want to color grade it to look like it's nighttime. You want to do fixing. You can fix remember, were you here last class when I showed everyone how to fix perspective in Photoshop? No, you weren't in the class, but I did a lot of perspective work the other day. You can do that here. So there's so much stuff you can do in here. And when you've exhausted that, and the photo is like, that's where you'd want to begin, then you open in Photoshop and you begin from there for anything else you'd want. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and then when you do make those adjustments, does it replace the original DNG file or does it just open?
Great question. No. So remember that I just had this one looking kind of bright blue and weird and green and all that kind of, I had made it look kind of weird like that, right? So say I leave it like that and I say done. So when I say done and I go back to bridge, that is what it looks like now. So it did seem to have replaced it, but it's eternally non-destructive. So I can right now completely get rid of all those in one fell swoop from here. I can actually go do a right click and say, where was it? Go back and clear all my settings and I'm back to the original one, right? Or I could have just gone in here, opened it again, and then taken the things off from inside of here. So basically it's all completely non-destructive. None of the things that you do in, let me just close all these, none of the things that you do in RAW are going to be eternally there. One more thing, and again, we're going to get into RAW a little bit later, but you can also have one image, and then you can have snapshots and change that same image, make it one version blue, one version yellow, one version black, just throwing out 3 ideas, and save them in the same DNG file. You can have 3 different settings that you save the file as, and then you can export it as 3 different things, okay? So in one RAW, you can make 3 choices for it, or more. I mean, I'm giving you an example of 3 choices for it. But before we go into the nitty gritty and details of RAW, because in different classes, I've covered so many things that I'm trying to work in a slightly different direction. One thing I haven't covered is how do you modify the files that you export straight from RAW, right? And you want to export them into a different size, format, resolution. I've always shown you that inside of Photoshop. I haven't shown you that in RAW. But we're going to start with how we do it in Photoshop, right? And Susambat read the handout really deeply and had a lot of great questions. How many of the rest of you also read the handouts at this point? I think there was 1 or 2 people who still had to read it last time. Oh, Angelina is not here. Okay, there were 2 more people here on Monday that aren't here today. Oh, Dan. Dan couldn't make it today, and Angelina, I don't know, she didn't communicate. Maybe she did, but since I was teaching, I don't get to see emails before class starts because I'm always teaching until the class starts, so I'll see. Anyway, here I'm trying to see my email as we speak, which isn't good. I always want to know what's up. All right, so I'm gonna sort by file name again so that it looks in the same order in which you're finding your files. I'm going to show you in Photoshop something I haven't showed. Well, I think I showed it once a few sessions ago. That has to do with when you have a file that's too small, how do you make it too small, like not enough resolution? How do you make it have more resolution? And there's a tool we used in RAW before, but there's now a tool in Photoshop that does a pretty good job. So we're going to be talking a little bit about all that. First of all, when I click on any file that I have here and I go over here to this side, the things that I taught you to look at is how many 900 by 600. What does that mean? What am I reading when I read 900 by 600?
Number of pixels, width and height.
Yeah, number of pixels per side. Okay, so 900 pixels on the longest side and 600 pixels on the shortest side. And I think the first day we met, I had someone do 900 times 600 or whatever when we were doing, and we discovered that there's like, 14 million pixels I think we had found last time or something like that on who knows what one. So that would be every single pixel you have in your image. But what says in here, 900 by 600 means that just one row of pixels over there, there's 900 of them. And 1 row of pixels top to bottom, there's 600 of them. When I look at this image right here and I read the data, it tells me that the file size is 375 KB, but it's kilobytes, and that this image is set at 240 PPI. So does someone want to give me a succinct description of what PPI means?
Pixels per inch.
Square inch.
Yeah, pixels per inch. Meaning, if I want to put this on the internet, does it matter how many pixels per inch I have?
No.
Oh,
Because the word inch refers to real life sizing, right? So the only time I care about pixels per inch is if I'm going to print it on paper, on a product, on a book. If I'm going to print it, I'm going to use ink on paper, ink on a material, unless I'm doing sublimation printing, but anyway. So it's ink on paper. And in that case, I would have to see how many of those pixels are going to pack themselves into 1 inch and see how many are left. So basically it's equivalent to grabbing all of this 900 here and dividing them by how many pixels I want in 1 inch. And to print a photo in really good quality, what's the number that you learned you need to have?
300 usually.
300 is a good gold standard number. So if I were to choose out of these 900 inches, if I want to pack them all into little bits of 300 each, I would get how many inches?
3.
3 inches. Yeah, 900 divided by 300 would be 3. So this photo, the biggest it can be on the sides would be a 3-inch photo to get a good quality image. Does that make sense? Now, this is a very round number. It's easy to calculate. I'm at a loss when I have numbers like that, or I don't know, like that. And I have no idea how to do it in my head. So this one is a good one to demonstrate. But that said, and then 600 divided by 3 is 2. So I'll know that this will be a 3 by 2 picture. But since I don't want to be doing those calculations by hand, I can let Photoshop do those calculations for me. But most importantly, I'm going to scroll down here. And when it says dimensions in inches, this is not saying 3 by 2. It's saying 3.8 by 2.5. And what I need to pay attention is that this number is not 300. It's 240. So this has been divided by 240. And that's why it's telling me 3.8 by 2.5, because that's the number it's divided by to tell me I can get a 3.8 inches. Now, have you read the handouts carefully? Is this a number that I will be able to print this image correctly?
Yeah, this is tough. Some Epson printers actually use 240. So the answer is sort of.
Yeah.
No.
At the very
Bring it
least,
up to 300.
at the very least, I think the handout says 245, I think is what the handout says is the number. Professionally, I've never gone under 260. The handout says 245. I mean, the nearer to 300 you can get, the better. But yeah, you could still, get a good picture out of it. But what does this number refer to? It refers to glossy photo paper. Glossy photo paper. You need 300. Imagine you're holding a really nice magazine, National Geographic, nicely printed photos. A photograph that you put on your wall, nicely printed photos. You want 300. But say that you're printing this in the Independent. If you're Santa Barbaran, the Independent is like a newspaper type of magazine. The quality on a newspaper type of paper is nowhere near as good as on a nice glossy photo paper. Does that make sense? The newspaper paper sucks away at the ink and spreads it out like it spreads the ink. So in the end, you could get away with having a smaller PPI amount, of PPI, and it won't look any worse or better because it's just a limit to how good that photo can look on that. If you make a photocopy of something, photocopies they're great, but they're not really good quality in comparison to the real thing. That's that example. So if you're going to print something on a canvas, it can be lower on a crinkled paper, right? So the standard of 300 PPI is a photo viewed at the distance, like when you're reading a book or a magazine, you have it at that distance and you're looking at it going, ooh, this is nice and sharp. But if you're going to look at that photo on a wall way out there, then it can also look sharp, even if it's less PPI. You just need to make sure you don't approach it, because if you approach it, then it'll look blurry or pixelated, right? So this is a golden standard number for printed images read at a close-up distance, like you would pick up a photo and look at it that way. All right. So in some images, this one, it's telling me that's limitation. But what if I do want it to be 300 PPI? I want it to be the best quality it can be, but I want the image to be an 8 by 10 image. Would I be able to do that?
No.
No.
Not without resizing it.
So let's go ahead and work on that. I brought an extremely tiny image, which is this one. And look at how many pixels it has, 300 by 200. It's set at 72 ppi, so it's telling me that I could get a print that's 4 by 3, but we know that's not right because this number says 72, right? So we're going to work on this one a little bit later to see what I can do with something so tiny. How can I fix that if I really do need to make a 4 by 5 out of it or something? But to start with, I'm going to have us use this image. Does this one have, is this the one? Yeah. This image here, the one that says Yosemite El Cap. I think it's the last one we have. Yeah. Yosemite El Cap. Let's open that one. Well, before we open it, how many pixels we have in here? This is many, many more pixels than before, right? 4,000 by 2,400, way much more than we've been talking about. Still, it says 72, so over here, it's like a ridiculous number. 56 by 34 is what it's telling me I can print. Don't believe it. If it says 72, don't believe it. Let's open it. Double click. So here we have an image, and I want you to look at the image, and when I say this is an image that has a good combination of smooth, lack of detail areas and very detailed areas, this is a great example of an image that you need to be quite careful when you do all this resizing, because this tree, the rocks, those are very highly detailed. They've got a lot of ins and outs and, you know, darks and lights and stuff. So anything weird that happens to the Hodo can kind of hide in all of that. But the smooth gradient of the sky is going to be a giveaway if you do this incorrectly. So we're going to work on this image to have an example of when it stops working well, and you'll see the gradient going kind of weird. So first of all, and I know many of you have done this, so I'm going to go rather quickly. I know Sisambati had some questions, so when you get into your question, please ask them. But we're going to, oh, looks like this one has already been worked on at some point, huh? Yeah, I don't know. It was left like that in the handout. You guys have this one with this?
Yes.
I guess some was worked on and saved there. Let's just get rid of this. I don't want complications. They're not doing much of a difference at this point. I don't care if the photo is good or bad, so I don't care about that. Just delete those two. I did it by dragging them. You can also right click, select both at the same time, and then right click and delete them both, right? And then delete them, and so it's faster, whatever. Okay, so now we're back to nothing. Now I'm going to go to image size. So I'm going to image size. Okay, or Shift Command Shift Control I. And we get this box, which we can make bigger or smaller. So when you first have it, it's probably that small, but we can make it bigger now. And it's telling me the same thing that this little bridge told me. Bridge told me here, 44,000 by 24, 72 ppi, 56 by 34. All of that is basically here. It's telling me that it's got 4,000 by 2,400 pixels. It says I can print it at 56 by 34 inches. And then we need to notice that, nope, that's not true because it's 72. According to this is a 56-inch file, right? So there's two things here that matter. And Ed, you said resizing, and I want to kind of correct you because what we would do is not resizing, but resampling. Right now, resizing is what we're going to do. Let's turn this little checkbox off. And we're going to resize this. Resizing is completely non-destructive. It doesn't change the image at all. Just the word resizing is considered. Now, notice that there's three things connected, right? This is a link. And if I turn this off or on, sorry, then these two are connected, but that's not connected. So let's have it off for now. This is the safe, non-destructive way. I've got 4,000 pixels. My image size is 28 megabytes. It's the how heavy my file is. Let's change this to 300 to 300 because I do want to print it. So if you change this to 300, then lo and behold, this can only be printed as a 13.5 by 8 and a bit image, not as big as we thought. Still a big image, by the way, to print it, but not 56 or whatever, because I'm limited by how many pixels I have. Now, for years, this was the golden rule. You're limited by that. You can't make it any bigger. But now for quite a few years now, we've been able to get a chance to fake create more pixels that that allow us to make a bigger image. But for now, if I look at my image over here, I'm looking at 100%. Why 100%? Because when we start messing up with pixels, we want to make sure that we're seeing it as sharp as it can be, right? And yes, this is pretty sharp for an image of a landscape. It's hazy and all stuff. I'm not talking about the quality of the image, but it's pretty sharp. So I'm going to move over here to see some of the sky as well. So nothing got changed. I still have the same size file, the same pixels. Now, how about if I move it to that 245 that the handout said? Now I can print it bigger. I can print it 16 by 10 and nothing has changed. What if instead of resolution, I want an image that is my frame is a 5 by 7. So I'm just going to go ahead and write a number 7 up there. So this changed to 4.3. That means that won't work. So I'm going to go with height 5. It's going to be a 5 by 8, and I'm going to have to cut some off. So now I have 490, basically 500 pixels resolution. Is it okay to print something at 500 pixels resolution?
Higher is better, right?
Higher is good. And some printers can handle higher resolution, digital printers and stuff like that. But most of the printers that you get on your desktop that you buy or something like that won't be able to do much with extra pixels. It's just going to look just as good for the most part. Lower looks worse. Higher changes it, but to the point that only a high expert could notice the difference. All right. None of this has changed the file. So if I say okay to this right now, I left it at 5 by 8 and I say okay, nothing has changed. It's identical. This is resizing, okay? Completely non-destructive, makes no difference. If I were to save this file right now, the only thing that would change, or no quality change to this, if I close it and open it in Bridge, the only difference would be that in Bridge over here, now the new information would be that I have a 496 PPI, and thus it can be printed as 8 by 5, right? So that's it. But I haven't modified the quality, the quantity, anything. It's all good. So I'm going to double click on it again. Let's go ahead and say that I want to change this to put it on the internet. Okay. So on the internet, we wouldn't go to the image size, but let me show you for a second what would happen in image size. If I did want to go to 72 resolution, right, it would tell me that it's humongous, kind of how we started. But what if I needed to change other stuff, like how many pixels I have? Or if I needed to print this at 300, but I really needed to keep it at 300, but I only needed to print a small, like 1 by 2 image, a 2 by 1, or whatever the proportion is going to be, because it's going to be for a business card. But it's a high quality business card. So let's go ahead and put it at 300. And then let's click on resample. And now on width, I'm going to say that I want this to be a 2-inch image, which is going to give me 2 and 1 by whatever. When I resample, I am definitely being destructive. I am clearly having to throw away material, information, not material, it's physical, but, and if I look up here, I've thrown away a ton of pixels. Look how many pixels I used to have, 4,000 by something, and now I'm down to 600. Thrown a ton of pixels away. And if I look at my file size, that used to be 28 megabytes, now it's only 650 kbyte, which by the way, this is much smaller because you need 1,000 K to make 1 megabyte, and this is less than 1 megabyte, and this is 28 megabytes. So I threw away so much information that I made this really tiny. Yeah. But does it look good? Is it high quality? Does it look healthy and nice?
Let's talk to
Yeah, it looks pretty good. So if I were to say okay, though, this is the part that's pretty dangerous because I'm left with an image that is going to be, and I'm going to go to 100%, that if I were to save it right now, I would lose all the quality that I ever had in it. If I next want to print it again by 8 by 10, it's gone and lost forever. Does that make sense?
of downsizing. It can be lost forever if it's saved. It's just save a copy.
I'm sorry, can you say that again? If you what?
Either like resizing or resampling and bringing it down. Compressing
Hold on.
it.
There's too much noise behind you. Can you write it? Because I can't understand your words. There's when you unlock, sometimes I can hear you, but today the noise is too bright. Just write your question down in the chat, please. Anyway, I'll wait for you to write your question. Meanwhile, I'm gonna warn you that going down is okay, but using this tool for image size, I don't want you using this tool to resample upwards. I don't want you to using this tool to go back to whatever size it used to be. I think it was 14 inches. I don't remember. I think it was around 4,200. Maybe it was more, 15. I don't remember what it was, but something like that. Because look what happens to the quality of your image. It gets horrible and pixelated. You see that? Now we went from something that's really tiny and we're trying to make it really big again. So you're basically having Photoshop invent a whole bunch of pixels. Now this is kind of where it ended in the past. I was just like, no, don't do this. But now we've got a much, much better way where this might be possible to be done, but not using the image size tool. I'm going to go ahead and say cancel. We're not going to say yay to this because you already see here the preview of what it's going to look like, which is really bad. Okay. And let's undo this because I don't want you guys to save over this and lose this information. So let's head back over here and choose the top choice. So it's back to having all the good resolution that it can have. Okay. So we've undone that. And now you know you can't make something that's smaller, bigger, safely. Let me see your question now that I can read it. Sisambat, when compressing, resampling the image, do we save a copy? Yes, definitely. You don't want to save that because if you save that, you've lost it. Okay. So you would export or save a copy. So let me go back here. If you do this, right, that you went down to 2 or 1, whatever it was that I had done, right? And you lost a whole bunch of information. I don't know if we had changed this. And we have very few pixels. If I save this now, I truly lose all that, okay? So it's kind of dangerous to go to save and remember to do a save a copy versus save as versus save. It's kind of like, ugh, I don't even want to go there because however good you are, at some point in a hurry, it might slip and you might do the wrong one and you might end up saving and then you really are done, right? So if you're ever going to go down in this tool, I highly recommend, I'm going to undo it, right? I'm going to go back to the normal. I highly recommend first duplicating the image. And when you get really good at this and you don't, I did this for a living for eons and I never made a mistake. I already saved as. And then one time in my professional life, I was in a hurry, whatever. And instead of doing Control Command S for a save as, I hit Command S and I saved. And I can't tell you what a humongous hassle that was. And it's just one little less pressed image. So if you're going to do anything like that, go ahead and duplicate it first. Go over here and give yourself a copy or a duplicate, right? And then when you have two, then you can make one much smaller, and that's good. But ideally, you could, yes, do a save as and then save it out. But I would recommend doing a duplicate first, and you do it either in Bridge or in the Finder window, and then you make it smaller and you save, and you still have your original. All right. Now let's go over to this teensy weensy image that already starts at 300 by 200. Let's go ahead and open that one. It's a JPEG. And look, it's 100%, and look at how tiny it looks. Now I'm going to do Command plus a little bit just so that I can see it a bit better. And I can't tell if it's sharp or not because it's so pixelated. Vera, this is what was happening to your truck. No matter that it was or not sharp, we don't know it was sharp. You had to go up. You were at 1200. You were at, not even that. You were at 1200 there. I'm at 1200 now. That's how up you were in resolution for yours to be able to see it. So there's no way you can draw a straight line across this because there is no straight lines, right? I'm going to go ahead and go back to fill in my screen a little bit. Let's just assume, and I'm going to go back to Command or Control 1, and I'm going to go one up because I'm in a Retina screen. At 200% for me, 100%, this looks pretty sharp, doesn't it? I'd say it looks pretty sharp. What do you think? That looks pretty good to me. At its maxed, it's, if I were to see this as a little thumbnail, I wouldn't go, ooh, that bird is so blurry. I'd go, oh, that's a bird. It's not, it doesn't have a very good contrast against the background, so you can't really see its colors too well. If this were a different color, you might see it better, but it's pretty good. Okay. But the problem is that if I try to print this, and if I turn off resample and do 300, I'll discover that I only can get a print that's 1 by half an inch, 1 inch by half an inch. And what if I truly need to do this image and I need to print it at, say, 4 by 5? I have to. I have looked and looked and looked, and no one has a better image. First of all, let's do this. Let's switch it to its best I can do, 300. So go to image size, turn off your resample, and put 300 so that without doing anything destructive, we get the best this image can go to is 1 inch by half an inch. And then we'll say, okay, nothing has changed. We're just saying, okay, I want to print this. What can I do? All right. There is a way to do it through Camera Raw. There's ways to do it with other products, but now we're going to do it inside of Photoshop. We are going to do two things. Hold on, I need to move this down. I have my tools in the way. We're going to go up here to where we see our filters. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and say convert for smart filters. I'm going to explain everything about smart filters at another time. Right now, just trust me on this one, convert for smart filters. When we do that, it's so that we can protect it from destruction. We'll talk about later. Right now, just I don't want to get into everything a smart filter is or a smart object is. We will, but right now, just do that. And the only way we know it, something happened, see this little box right here that appears at the bottom of the thumbnail? Let me undo that. It wasn't there before, you see that? And when I convert it into a smart object or smart filter, then I get, and it says, okay, then it has a little box in there. So visually, that's the only change. Now, let's go to filter and let's go to neural filters. Neural filters. Neural filters is the first thing that Photoshop began to do when it began playing around with machine learning, which slowly segued into I don't know if the technology changed a lot, I'm sure it did, but now they call it generative,
Yeah,
sorry,
my,
artificial intelligence.
mine is grayed out. Why would that happen?
Okay, so are you selecting your layer? Select the layer,
Yes, I select my layer, it turns blue,
okay.
and now it came back.
Now it's there, yeah. Because if the layer isn't selected and you go here, it's all grayed out, right? So you need to have the layer selected. Then you go to filters, neural filters. So these are all artificial intelligence. This is all something that Photoshop is going to invent. And there's some really fun ones. We're going to go to the one that I'm trying to teach you about right now, which is this one called Super Zoom. So click on Super Zoom. And when you click on it, you'll have to turn this feature on. Click on that. And if you don't have it yet, right, it'll have a little cloud. It might be that you need to download it. So click on the little cloud and it'll download into your computer. Sisombat, you're on VDI. Does yours have a little cloud or did it turn on?
I have a little cloud. I downloaded it and I turned it on.
And it's working? Okay. Sometimes the neural filters on VDI don't work as well because it's slower. But anyway, you tell me how it's going. All right. So right now, this is showing me the image at 1x, which is the original image. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that you click on Enhance Image Details. And why not? Let's click on Remove JPEG Artifacts, which is what happens when you compress. For now, don't worry about that. We're going to leave the rest as is. We can do more stuff, but we're not going to change anything else. What we want to do on this one is we're going to output it. And when you go over here, you can make it into a new layer or a new document. We want a new document. Okay. Let's go ahead and say okay to that. Is everyone with me? So okay to that. Not good. The opposite happened.
I have the little marching answer on mine. Is it supposed to?
Yeah, no, it's okay, but it didn't do the, I mean, this one that opened that's untitled did not do the, I'm missing a step or something. Let's close this up and get rid of it. Don't save it. Let's go back to this one. It might be, it's possible that you don't have to have it be. Yeah, so let's go back and take the convert to smart object off. Let's go back into history. And I believe this one needs to not be a smart object for it to work. Might be wrong on that one, but I think that might be the problem. So turn that off and let's go back to neural filters. Let's go back to Super Zoom. And where's the choice to how much to duplicate it? Let me just say, okay.
Super Zoom only does a 2x.
Yeah, but you can do it again and again and again.
I noticed there's a plus sign and minus sign zoom image under Super Zoom. Do we play with that or no?
Yeah, it's not doing it. I'm missing a step. I haven't done it for a while, but I did it a bunch of times. I didn't understand what you said. There used to be a place where you could tell it.
I think he said, yeah, right there. If you click on the right there, yeah.
Oh, there. No, that's how it's showing it to zoom image. But I don't think, let's see. No, I think this is just to zoom in. Let's try it. I don't think that's it, but let me try it. I mean, it's crazy. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it was there. Okay. That's weird. I thought it would have had a slider or something. I think I haven't used it for a while, so they must have changed where the section was because it used to be a slider here. Would you tell it what to do? Okay. All right. So see over here, it said that it was 1x. If you click on the plus sign, it goes to 2x. But if I do 3 and 4, like right now it says 4x, right? Let's start at that point. Let's click on remove JPEG artifacts. We might want to sharpen or not right now. Let's not move things around. Let's just go with what it's showing me. And I'm going to go with 4x and I'm going to say new document and I'm going to say okay. So here's that image. If I go to image size now, I used to have, was it 300 by 200? How many pixels did we have? I'm sorry, I need to remember. We had, this one was, the original one was, yeah, 300 by 200, 175K. Okay, 300 by 200. Now this new one, if I go to this image size, and it's 1200 by 800. This was all increased by the tool called Super Zoom in Artificial Intelligence. I went from 200K or something like that to 2.7 megabytes. And yeah, it's not the sharpest image yet, but we remember we didn't move any of our sliders, nor did we even apply sharpening over here. But this would allow me right now to make this be a 4:2. I think I said I wanted it to be a 5:7, I believe. So I'm going to go ahead and say cancel to that. Let's go. You can even work on this one, or you can go back to the original one. Before you had to go ahead and like duplicate and then duplicate and then duplicate. But in this one, I was able to go 4 times at once. Yes, Rebecca?
I forgot.
Oh, sorry. So I'm not sure if it's better to go back to the original and say times 6, or if it's better to apply it here. In the past, when I've done this, I've super zoomed it again and again off of the result. So I'd have to test right now to see which is better. But I'm going to go back to the original now. I go back to the original and I'm going to do it again. But this time I'm going to click on this and say, what's the 6 times? Let me see what's the limit. Wow, that's weird. I'm curious. I'm really curious. I'm going to see what it does if I say 16x. Don't do it, especially not if you're on VDI or on a slow computer. No, see, there's no okay. It's not letting me. So yeah, that's weird. Minus, minus, minus. Yeah, there it starts saying okay.
I think it might have to think for a minute because mine didn't say okay at first, and then after a few seconds, like it did.
Okay, you're right.
It's
3,
processing.
4, 5. Oh yeah, processing on device. Let me, I'm curious, would it really be able to do that much? I was going to stop at 6, but now I want to see what happens to the quality.
I went
Yeah,
to
you're right.
God.
Out of curiosity, I'm going to see it gets slower and slower and slower. Don't push your computer if it's too low. I'm going to go to 10x just because. All right, let's see what it does at 10x again. I haven't changed. Why don't we do it? Let's just make it, I'm going to just, let me give it a 10. It's 10x and I'm going to give it a 10 sharpen. I'm not going to work with anything else. If you say enhance face details, it might or not be able to do that because it's not a face, but AI is now kind of recognizing eyes as eyes, even if they're not human eyes. Anyway, I just said yes to that and yes to that. It's not apples to apples because I hadn't said that to the other one, but now I'm going to say okay. And wow. It's much softer. I mean, come on, 10x, that's crazy. I made it the equivalent of a 10:6. But, and I'm at 100% right now, so that's the quality. But that's completely still recognizable as a bird. This would have been absolutely impossible before. I don't recommend going 10x, but if worst case scenario, you have to. It looks a bit more like a painting of a bird now than a real bird. But hey, but it's still the bird. Now, No worries, Barbara. Thanks for joining us. We're doing some
So turn it into an oil painting.
altruism. It did, right? Now I don't think as a photo this is a good resolution, but then again, you could have never enhanced this big before this much, 10x, and made it look good. I am curious if I were to do it step by step, if it would work better. I'm going to go here and make it a more reasonable number now. Filter, NeuroGal. And I started with a very tiny image, which I truly don't know how quality it was. But we can start with a regular image that already has very sharp quality and see what it does. But with this one, which has already been compressed, JPEG compressed for the internet and stuff like that, because this is an internet photo. If I sharpen it, I don't know. Let's see what happens if I sharpen it to 30. I haven't tried. This one doesn't have much noise to start with, but let's go max on everything. Enhance face 30, 30, and let's go 6 times. I don't know. Let's just see. Not bad. Now, I have tried this with good images that are already sharp, and I've been amazed at how it makes it bigger with amazingly. And by the way, here I could still go ahead and do other, filters and stuff that I can sharpen it and sharpen more and just do a bunch of other stuff here that I haven't yet. So we could still work on getting it sharper and blah, blah, blah. But I'm going to cancel that. And I'm going to have us go to bridge and go to an image that is sharp. This one is originally very sharp, and that's what I was going to do it with because it's also small-ish. But I had one more image that was small and sharp. This one was not so small. I brought 2 small images that were sharp. 13. I had one more that I was going to practice with, and I'm trying to remember which one it was. Well, maybe this one. It wasn't this one. It was one that had more detail. If I click around, I'll find which one is the one that I was going to do this in. But anyway, I'm going to go with, is this one? No, this one's pretty big. It was one that had, these are all big. Okay, I'm going to go with this one then. It is sharp. If nothing else, it's sharp. So I'm going to double click on this one at 100%. And now I know that it's sharp. I'm going to go to filter, neural filters, because the bird, I wasn't sure how sharp it was originally. And I'm going to make it yeah, the last time I used this tool, you could only go twice and then you had to go twice again. So I'm wondering if twice and twice again is equivalent to 4x, but we'll see. And yeah, I'm going to go ahead and sharpen it and noise reduction. Remove artifacts. There's no face here, so I'm going to let it think. And I'll say, okay. I need to see the whole thing. But yeah. I don't like it. I've always done 2x and then 2x and 2x looks good. Somehow 4x seems a bit more fake, right? This leaf doesn't look that realistic now. It's more like a painting. I'm going to try doing 2x and 2x. And then after that, we're going to move on to something else because you can keep playing around on your own with this and then come back. But I'm just going to do 2x. Maybe I won't sharpen or do anything because I don't know if the effect was because of that or not. I'm just going to do 2x. And yeah, this 2x looks exactly the same as before. The 2x looks great. Maybe it was that sharpening. Now I'm going to do it again to this one. That's 2x. I'm going to go back to filter, neural filters, and super zoom. And I'm going to do 2x again. And I'm not using any sharpening. And yeah, I like it much better. It might, see how I see still the texture. I think maybe when I did the sharp, I don't know if it was the sharpening or what, but now I'm at 4x And I see the texture of the leaf, which I didn't see last time when I went straight to that. And the wood still looks like wood. So yeah, maybe that's the key, or maybe it was the fact that I did, that I had done this whole sharpen thing that was wrong. I don't know. But now I'm going to get back to 2x again. And that would be equivalent of the 6x. And that'll be the better test. I moved it. It's okay. And that will be the final test. I'm going to say okay. Oh, wow. Much better. Look at that. I still see the text. So this is 222, and it still looks really good versus the one that I did that was just 6x or something like that, that I didn't like at all. But maybe it's because I told it to sharpen or noise. I don't know. This is 222, and it's still looking great. And it's much bigger. If I go over to this image size now, it's a 12 by 8. I can print it as a 12 by 8, right? And originally, my original leaf, I would have only been able to print as a 2 by 4, 2 by 3, right? So I have gone 2, 2, 2, and my final one is going to give me a pretty nice, look at all the texture. Everything is really good at 12 by 8. So anyway, I'm going to save this one, and I'm going to still call it leaf, so it's in the same place. Super zoomed 2x 3 times, you know, because I did it again and again and again, or 4 times, 2, 4, 6, and then I'm going to save it. And so in Bridge, that's the only one I'm going to save. It's the original one and the other one. Okay, I moved it. Okay. All right, so I'm very impressed with this, which was completely impossible before. Looking at the time, there's other apps that have been able to do that for a while, and so Photoshop is catching up. That said, Photoshop is probably still behind what other apps can do, but now inside of Photoshop, you can do this, which you couldn't do before. And I'm going to close all the in-betweens. Was this, or was this the biggest one? No, this was the one that was the biggest one. This is the one that was the biggest one. Okay, so I'm going to actually save this one as the Super X 3 times, and I'm going to save over it. Okay. Save over the right one, the biggest one. Okay, so now I'm done. I'm turning everything else off, closing all the rest without saving. And I am going to do some more exploration on why it went fuzzy, if it was because we did it all at once at 6, or if it's because I turned on those sharpen things that had I not turned them on, it might have been better. Okay.
Diana, isn't there something you can do with the pixels so they like reproduce themselves or something as you're enlarging?
Yeah, that's what we did to this one. It saved separately. So this was my this is my one that's been zoomed 6 times, and the original one is still there, like it's saved as. This is my original one with 900 by 600, and this is my new one with 3600 by 2400 pixels. Okay, so much bigger. So it didn't do it over the original one.
Is there a difference in
Tomorrow,
changing the
looks
pixels or changing the inches
degrees Fahrenheit and a low of
other than
Yeah.
size?
You know what though? Yeah, but we kind of went over that a little bit at the beginning, so I'm gonna just
Okay, well, I'm gonna watch the.
yeah,
other-
watch the recording. I
Yeah.
want, now the important thing about this image, and we're gonna go back to this one, is we're gonna see how we export it to the internet and do compression, because this was all making it bigger, stuff that in the past we couldn't do inside of Photoshop well. And now we're gonna see what we can do well about compressing it and making it smaller, which is what we need if we're going to screen versus if we're going to print, okay? So this would have printed fine on screen, not printed, would have shown this size and it would have been fine, but it was too few pixels to print. I'm gonna close it, but this one, I'm gonna close all these, but this one on the other hand is too big for the internet. Okay, it's too big as a file to print, so we need to do the opposite. We need to resize it to smaller, resample it to smaller, and compress it. So we're going to talk compression and all of that when we come back. All right. Where's the time? I think I went way over past our break, didn't I? Yeah. My eye is killing me. A lot of dust in the house today.
I've got 6:32.
Remodeling. So 6:32. Be back. Oh, I'm on this screen. Okay, so let's do 15 minutes. Be back by
47.
6:47 p.m. Thank you.
You're really into teaching today. You went over this morning too.
I know you
I'm
were in the
sorry.
morning class too. I kept going and going. All right, see you
That's
guys in.
cool. I
See you
don't
guys
care.
in. Yeah, you don't care, but I do, and I didn't get a
I
break.
know. Your voice probably really is tired by the end of this.
Yeah, you were trying to say something. Was it Nick or someone was trying
Oh,
to say
I was just, should we go ahead over the weekend and download the 2025 or I missed that discussion?
Yeah, I downloaded it. I left the 2024. I downloaded 2025 and I've had I just did like 10 minutes of playing around with it to see the differences. I looked at the list of what's new to see what's worth it. And there's one or two tools that I tried that they were okay-ish, but I haven't tested all the new things. There's a list of what they changed and I just tried the first two tools. So I haven't seen any perceptible differences to looking different as long as your computer is fast enough and then it'll, handle working with a bigger one. I'm going to dive deeper into what the other changes are to see if there's any big differences, then I'll know. But right now I only did a bit of an explanation for it. So yeah, if you I kept both so that I recommend keeping both, testing the new one if your computer still handles it. If you can do things like neural filters and it still chunks it out and processes it out in generative fill and it processes it out well, then you can dump the 2024. Yeah. But first, try it out. Okay. All right. See you guys in less than 15 now. Bye. All right, we're back. Those of you who are here that normally turn on your videos, please turn it on. Otherwise, if you're here and I don't see you, give me a yes so that I know that there's a warm body at the other end of the chair. At the other end of the Zoom, I guess, not at the end of the chair. Oh, my headsets are not on me. That would be helpful if I want to hear you guys. Okay. So after we all went to break, I remembered to write that I need you guys to post the Super Zoom stuff on Padlet. So don't forget to give me some examples. And in this case, as far as I'm concerned, maybe a good in a little bit of the way that could show this might be also if we could show like parallel the data from here and the data from here or something like that. But anyway, just remember, post and write how to do it. Okay. So back to Photoshop. If we're back on this image here, I want us to explore, what I have. What's it not? I have some Zoom stuff in the way. It's not letting me move up, move my screen into the right place. Hold on. Why is it not letting me? Okay, there's just stuff that's not going out. It's my Zoom window is interfering with one of the things I need to be able to use Bridge, and so it's bugging me. Okay, here we go. All right, so that's if we wanted to print or if we wanted to go bigger. We can always with the tool called image size, we can do anything that has to do with print as far as it's flat or smaller. But if we want to go bigger, or say that the image is big enough, but it's at 30, so if I'm in Bridge and I have an image that has enough pixels, right, that I could print it as big as I want, but it's set at 72 to start with. One of these that's pretty big. Not the DNGs. The DNGs don't show you the resolution to start with. I'm trying to find, well, never mind. If you find one that's big enough to start with, like this one, but this is also a DNG. There we go. This one is 72 PPI, but it definitely has enough pixels to print it as big as I want. I mean, I don't want it to be 45 by 56. I want it to be, 8 by 10. This would have enough. So if I were to print it, opening it in Photoshop, and I wanted to control the size and the other stuff about it, when I save it, I would have to do image size and change it to 300. By changing it to 300, I wouldn't affect the image. I would just resize, which is not messing up with it, and save it again. Then over here, it show up at 300 and it'll tell me 8 by 10 or whatever it tells me. That is a good thing to do. But if I want to make it bigger, now we can. We use a super zoom filter and we save it separately, which is what we did there. So the other thing that we're going to do in Photoshop then is make this smaller to see if we can take it to the internet. And why do we want it smaller? Because this image, and I'm selecting this one, is very, very big in pixels. And in fact, it's very big in file size. It's 55 megabytes, and it's this big because it's layered, okay? A layered file is much bigger than a file that is not layered. And when you go to this file, it's layered, but I even had you throw away the layers, right? So I'm sorry, I have something in my eye that's killing me, and I'm digging away at it. I was under some trees today, dragging some stuff through the garden, and a lot of dust fell on I had to take bunches of leaves off my hair, but I guess something got into my eye. Okay. So I opened this file and I told you guys to to throw the layers away, but it's still a layered file. So let me just show you what I'm talking about. When you head down to the bottom left of this screen, if you look at next to where it says how much percentage, it says doc, it says 28.7 megabytes, and then it says /34.9. This is still a layered file, even if I threw the other layers away. The fact that it says layer and not background. Watch if I were to try to flatten this image. I'm going to go over here. I guess I could do it as a right click, or I can go to this little link over there. Let me do it with a right click because the panel reads better. See if I were to say to flatten the image. When I flatten it, even though there was nothing to flatten it into, it became background, and then look at the numbers. It went back to being 28 to 28. See what I mean? Just the fact that it was layered, allowed to be loose, had already increased the size of this image. And all it took was clicking on this lock to unflatten it. And then there's a bigger size. Now, this time it didn't yet undo. It didn't yet double up, but look what's going to happen if I do duplicate it. I'm going to take this layer and I'm going to say Command or Control J for like jump. I have added a layer that's identical. So it's just as big, just as many pixels. When I go down there, you can see that it's doubled up in size, right? So layered files are way bigger. Now this is a whole layer of pixels that I've added. I'm going to undo that and go to Command Z, or I can go back one over here. And now I'm going to add adjustment layer, any adjustment layer. I'm going to go with good old hue saturation. I'm going to make this gray, or whatever it is. And I look down here, and with this added to it, what happened here in size? Did it get much bigger?
No.
Yeah, I'm just,
Didn't change size.
yeah, because this is a non-destructive change. It's a non-destructive layer that all it is, it's informing the computer that whatever used to look blue, now please look orange. But this isn't, there's no pixels in this. This is just metadata information that's in the code changing how the blue pixel looks, right? So it doesn't take space per se, right? Depending, not all the layers are, not all the adjustment layers are completely faultless as far as size is concerned, but certain effects take a bit more. But yes, Barbara?
If you do a save as with that and turn it into a completely different file, will it be larger or the same size? I guess I could try it right now.
No, this one should be the same size as what it's showing you here.
Okay.
I'm going to go ahead and let's undo and go all the way back to the very beginning of when we opened this, because when we had it at the beginning, oh no, I guess I've already saved. So remember we had two little layers in there. I guess I've already got rid of them. I thought maybe I still had them in here, but I don't. Those two layers that we had, I wanted to show you that it was a bit bigger. But anyway, so now if we want to put all of this information in the internet, instead of image size, what we need to do is compress it. So what we need to do is we need to go over to File, and we're going to head over to Export. The feature of export is in a way equivalent of save as or save a copy, in that it isn't equivalent, but it won't mess up this image. Okay. File image size that we did before, if I change it here, it's changing in the image. And if I save it, I ruin my file. But if instead I do export, what it's saying is I'll keep this one as is, but I'm going to give you a new version to export. right? So we're going to go to export as. So this new version that we're creating will go sit next to this one, right? But it's not going to override it, okay? So this is safe to do as far as messing up or not, because now we're really going to mess up with this one. We're going to lose a lot of its information, but we're not going to lose the quality in the image because it's going to happen only to the exported version of the file. So when we first do export as, what we're seeing is a preview. Let's switch. First of all, we're going to export. Let me explain you the differences. We're going to go and export as a JPEG. A JPEG is the main format to this day. Things change all the time. Who knows what I'll be saying in a few years, because there's some things coming up that are different. But right now, every single browser in the world can read a JPEG. Every single app, every single, I mean, I don't think there's anything that can't read a JPEG format. So it's the most versatile and universal of formats if you want something to be seen by someone else on their old phone, on their new phone, on their old whatever, anything. JPEG is kind of, anyone can handle it. So we're going to save it as a JPEG. Now, a JPEG format is an image that when you take a picture and the camera saves it, it doesn't save it with all the information that it was able to see. If it saves it with all the information it was able to capture without changing anything, that's a raw file. Because I haven't really explained raw yet, but that's what raw is. It's an image where the camera sees a bunch of stuff, captures it, and saves it exactly as it saw it. That's a raw image. That image is way too big. It's very, very big. And if you were to take, thousands of photos and have them still fit in your phone or in your little card, it becomes very full very soon. So the JPEG, the moment you take the picture, the camera already squishes it, compresses it into a format that makes it much smaller. But by doing that, it also robs it of some of the quality that it had, some of the possibilities, especially at the ends of the spectrum, brights, very brights and very dark colors, very bright lights, very dark lights. And when it compresses it, it also adds some warmth, some sharpening, like the camera does that for you. And you end up with an image that is much better to look at than a raw image. But it has its limitations in that it's already been compressed, which gives you a smaller file, but lesser quality. Now, almost all the photos we've ever taken are JPEGs. That's always been happening. The only for the last, I don't know, last few years, it's been quite a few years that the raw images could be taken. But at first it was only for professional cameras, very expensive cameras. It's only been, I don't know, 5 years now. I'm thinking off the top of my head, maybe 5, 6 years since regular folks' cameras can take raw images. I know you did like that, Ed. How long ago since like a regular camera can take a good enough raw image, like a phone? They've been able to do it through other apps.
The point and shoots 10 years ago were doing raw at that point. So it's been about 10 years.
Yeah, no.
Phones only probably did raw.
Yeah.
Probably last 5 years.
Yeah, not phones 5 years, not point and shoots. You still had to go a bit higher up. You had to go to the $300 point and shoot, not to the $100
Oh, well,
point and
yeah.
shoot.
I'm
Right?
talking about a Canon G5.
Yeah, you needed to spend some money, $600 even 10 years ago. But a regular point and shoot that you would buy for like $120, that wouldn't do raw. So
Sure.
for the regular person who just wants a vacation picture, they couldn't do raw until they got it capability in their phones. So for years, we've all been using JPEG. So it's not a bad format. It's just that it's limited from the start. And when you want to post things on the internet, you got to limit it even more. So you need to compress it even more. The first thing you're going to do is you need to find out how many pixels size your image needs to be. And that has nothing to do with this setting. It has to do with where are you going to print it? Where are you going to post it? Is it going to be on a web page? Is it going to be on a blog? Is it going to be whatever? And then you got to go and find out from the designer of that page or from the specs of that page. They'll tell you, I want your photo to be 200 by 300 pixels. That means it's going to be a teensy weensy little image. Or I want it to be 1200, or I want it to be 2400. And then you know that you might be talking about an image that's going to fill the screen. But it's really hard to say because there's so many different resolutions and screens and stuff like that. So it's hard. You wouldn't be able to know. You'd have to go find out where it's going to be posted, what's the resolution they want and they need. And if any of you guys is an artist, like paint, oil, or sculpture, or something like, hands-on artist, a lot of times artists take this picture, artists takes this image for a gallery. They want to present it to a gallery. They want to sell it online. They want to have a show. Once I had a student who was trying to get some of her images into a show at the MoMA. And they'll tell you, I need it to be this side, this resolution, these many pixels. So basically you got to find out what they want. So say that they want it to be, they only give you the biggest one. Say they want it to be 2,500 pixels, right? So we have 4,000 pixels. That's what's going to give you the size, not the inches, but the size. It's going to be relative. So my image at 4,000 pixels is going to look yay big on my screen and yay big on your screen and yay big on a phone and yay big. So it's not set in stone like inches. It depends on the resolution of the screen that's viewing that image, right? So let's just say that this client, this page, this thing I'm going to use wants it to be 2,500 inches. So already, if I look over here to the left side, this image at 4,000 pixels is 3.5 megabytes. Tell me it's 3.5 megabytes. When I go ahead and I give it 2,500 pixels, if I just write that number in there, nothing happens. I'm going to have to hit the tab so that it changes, and then proportionally, it also changes the other one so it doesn't get distorted, right? And when you do that, you look over here, and it went down to be 1.6 megabytes. So that's the best way to make a file smaller. Take pixels away. But there's a limit, because if you make it too small, the image shows out tiny, right? So it's not like you can just change pixels willy-nilly. But say that that's what we find out is our image has to be 2,500 pixels. This, if I were to save this file, I've basically thrown away 2,000 pixels, right? Or something. So that would be destructive. But since I'm in a mode that's called export, it's not going to affect my real image. It's only going to affect the version that I'm exporting. Okay. So in that sense, the final image will have been destructively modified, but not the original. All right. So I got rid of a lot of pixels, thus I got rid of a lot of size. And by the way, it's already in a bit of compression. I forgot to say, let's go all the way to the top, to the highest number, which is 7. So when we were at the right size, we had more pixels, more than 35. Now that we're at 2,500, we're now down at 3 megabytes. So it might have, when we were at 7, we were probably at, I don't know, 5 megabytes or something like that. Okay, so the reason we need it to be small is because when people are going to the internet, they want to be able to download and see this photo much faster, okay? And they don't want to sit there and wait for the photo to appear on their phone. And granted, a lot of people now have fast connections, cable and whatever, but if you're on your phone on data, not on Wi-Fi, out in the middle of the whatever, then you're really still depending on that size of that image to show up fast because you don't have quick Wi-Fi or quick anything. So you still need to make your image as small as possible. Rule of thumb, which doesn't mean much, but you want your image to be less than 1 megabyte. This one's 3 megabyte, but you also want it to be, the whole web page has to be less than 3 megabytes. Imagine that this whole web page And let me go to a regular web page. I don't know, weather.com or something like that. All of this web page has to be less than 1 megabyte with all of the images that are coming up here. All right. Not just one image. Many times web pages don't show you only one image. They show you little buttons and little this and little that, and you have a whole bunch of information. So consider that if the minimum that you want is 1 megabyte, the maximum you want is 1 megabyte, then if this image is going to share the page with 5 other images, then it shouldn't be more than 1/4 of a megabyte or less. Does that make sense? So when you have less than 1 megabyte, you go down to kilobytes. So 1 megabyte is going to be equivalent to 1,000 kilobytes. So when we get this a bit smaller, we're going to start seeing a KB and the numbers are going to be bigger. So since I've taken all the pixels away that I can, if my goal is going to be less than 250 kilobytes, for example, 250 kilobytes might be what we want this image to be max, then we have to start compressing, literally squeezing it. So we're going to get the compression. We're going to go over here and set up a 2UP, so that we can see the before and after. So we've already taken out pixels, right? Oh, the second one.
Are you showing your screen?
Yeah, let me cancel and start again and stop the share and start again. Sometimes I need to do that for you to see everything. All right, can you see it now?
Thank
see
you.
it? Okay, so export as JPEG. Oh, why I said JPEG is because this is an image. PNG is going to give us images that are for the internet, but you only want to use it when you have transparency. Like if this was a mountain cut out without a sky, you would want to save it as a PNG. It's going to end up bigger than a JPEG. And since you have the sky included, the JPEG is the way to go because you want it smaller, and PNG doesn't go as small. The PNG compression is not lossy, so it doesn't lose quality, but it doesn't get as small. Versus the JPEG is a lossy compression format. Lossy meaning that you do want it, that it will lose quality. So now let me go back to where we were, which is 2,500, I think, is that what we had done? And then when I go to up, over here I'm seeing one version, and here I'm seeing the other version. I'm noticing that I need to match them up. I need to, because I did it before I should have done the 2UP first, but since I didn't, let's go ahead and lose that amount on both. Okay. So let's see that we leave this one as how it used to look, right? Then we have the preview of what it looks like now. But down here it says 15%, which means it's always going to look great. So we're going to up this to be 100% on both of them. And we're going to want to see a little bit of the sky and a little bit of the detail. So somewhere over there, right? So this one has already had a lot of pixels taken out. Quality is fine, no change. Now let's select this one because we're going to start compressing it. Oh, this one, we're going to shift to JPEG and we're going to start compressing it. So over here, it's telling me that this one is 3.1 megabytes at 7 compression, which means the least amount of possible compression. So that's a high quality image. And then this one, we're going to begin to bring it down. So just bringing it down to 6, from 3 megabytes, it went down to 1.6 megabytes. Quality still looks good. Now I'm going to bring it down. Let's all at once, just to see the change. Let's bring it all the way to quality 1, all at once. Lowest quality image, most compression possible. When I look at this image, this is the most it can compress. Look at the size it can be, 329 KB. Is that the size I wanted? Was it realistic? I asked for 250. Am I there yet? No, I'm not there yet. And that's because this image is pretty big. And if I have to compress it this much, look what's happening to the quality. Look at the sky. Compare that sky to this sky. Can you see the banding that's happening?
No.
I'm going to go 200% so you can see it a bit better. You might need to see it on your computer, but look at what's happening there.
Make you bigger.
If you have a retina screen, you can go to 200.
When you say banding, you're also saying pixels, right? And you can see the pixels.
I'm sorry, the noise behind you, I really couldn't hear you. Did anyone else understand? Otherwise, please write it.
No.
Yeah, it's the noise is too much. Put
Yeah,
it in
he's
the.
saying you can also see pixels.
You can see, yeah, so here's what's happening. You see the banding here is you have so much compression that instead of millions of colors, what's happening is you can only see maybe hundreds of thousands of colors, which means that there's not enough colors to complete a smooth gradient. And so in the transition between the colors that it can show you, it looks pixelated, right? But it's because it's trying to transition and it doesn't have enough chance to use all the tones that you can hear, which, believe it or not, that is darker and this is lighter. It doesn't seem like much of a gradient, but it is. And so over here, when we compress this much, we get huge amounts of compression. Now let's move over to this side of the tree, of the image. What about here? How good or bad does this look to you? I compressed the max I can compress. What's happening here? Quality-wise, what do you think? Between that,
No.
this one, 3 megabytes.
I can't see the difference.
This one. Yeah, exactly. The same thing is actually happening. That's happening there, but the details of the image are hiding those artifacts. That's called JPEG artifacts. They're hidden in this. If you really had a chance to compare one by one and had eagle eyes and were able to do it at 200, 300, like if you really could compare, you might notice that this one here, and I went to 400%. This one here around the leaves is okay, but this one, see how it has like a halo around the leaves, and look at the sky there and there. But you see a little bit of a halo, but you're still seeing it in the sky. When you get in here, you're barely seeing it because all those little lines are hiding. I see a little line right there that I don't see there, so it's minimal. So I'm going to go back to 100%. But basically, this is why you can compress the heck out of a detailed image and still be fine. But you got to be, and it's still fine okay here, fine okay here. But it's when you get to the smooth colors that it all breaks bad. Does that make sense? Which is why you have, had we done the same thing, had we done the same thing with the leaf, right? If I look at the leaf, there's detail everywhere. Believe it or not, this texture of the leaf is enough to hide that mess. This leaf would have been okay-ish. I mean, ideally, you would still not, but it's the smooth gradients where it breaks down. So since this is what I have, I'm going to start moving up again until I don't see that disaster happening anymore. And for some images, it kind of works at 4. This is, I can still see some of the lines, but I could still give it a pass. I see some stuff there, not much. Like if I were to be shown this image without having the one next to it, I wouldn't think it's banded. If this was a photo that I'm showing how great my photography is, I would still want to do less because I can see a little bit of stuff happening here. But if this is a thumbnail that's going to be shown that in quality, no one's really looking at it, they're thinking about skiing or whatever, then maybe this is okay. Otherwise, probably 5 is safer. And when you just do automatic reduction, all the automatic reductions that you do in other programs, like they do for you, they always go just to basically to 6. That's the kind of automatic that you'll be safe almost anywhere. 5, many images, you'll be okay. 4, you're beginning to push it. But let's say that we really want it to be smaller. Maybe we'll push this one to 4. All right, your hand's been up for a while, Nick. So yeah, what's up?
I was just curious because I actually didn't realize, besides reducing the number of colors in a file, like how else do they compress data? Obviously, they don't reduce the resolution. So
The technicality of how a JPEG compresses, don't know. All I know is that when they compress, when it's compressed too much or overly compressed, it's not that it gets pixelated. That's when you make it bigger than it should be. That's pixelated. This just begins to get what's called JPEG artifacts. And the JPEG artifacts are what you would see. I'm going to go back up to 500%. It's this little stuff that you see right here around the edges of this leaf. And you might need to do it on your own screen, but that stuff, those are the artifacts that get that suddenly get created. And it's very easy to see them in halos around the edges of stuff, right? If you ever see an image, and again, the more you compress it, of course, the worse they get, right? But that's what starts to happen. And then when you compress JPEG over JPEG over JPEG, that suddenly becomes part of the image. You know, so anyway, in this case, if we do 4, we're getting away with it at 100%, but it's still there. I'm already messing the quality, right? But how the technicality of what happens behind the scenes, I don't know. I really don't know. Yeah, maybe Ed was more of a computer tech.
No,
Maybe he knows.
I'm not going to get into compression on JPEG. And if you really wanted JPEG XL, which is what the new standard will be, is something else, because you can do it both lossy or lossless. What I was going to say is that in the neural filters, there is actually a beta filter for removing JPEG artifacts. And what I understand is that when it comes out of beta, it will now be in the export thing also. So when you're sitting there, you'll be able to click it and remove JPEG artifacts. And it may make it where you can compress things a lot better.
Wow, that would be very cool. So right now, if I'm looking at it at 700%, the sky has little JPEG artifacts all over at this compression. If I were looking at it 1%, you can just see it looks like Minecraft, right? Like huge, huge little boxes. So we can say it looks pixelated, but this isn't really what, when you talk about pixelated, usually it's the other way around. You made an image bigger than it should. When you compress it a lot, it at 700%, it looks like pixels, but at, you know, at the percentage that it's going to be printed at, it just turns into something that when we see it, we call it artifacts. And it looks like, from what Ed is saying, that there are, you'll all see when we finish with this, and class is over, by the way, but I want to show you really quickly a NeuroFilter that's all about getting rid of JPEG artifacts. Anyway, so this is the one that we want. It's not small enough yet. So the only choice we have left, if we want good quality, is to keep taking away pixels. But if that's the size we wanted, and you still need to print it, then you need to keep going down in quality, right? And see what you're willing to live with. So basically, it's a give and take. And maybe you need to choose another image where there's less sky, or maybe you need to print it smaller. So maybe you make it only 2000 pixels and you see it 2000. If maybe you can get to 250 with one more point of compression, you know, so you play around with that a lot until you finally get to where you want. Since class is over, let's choose one of the, I'm going to go back to where we had 2500, and at 2504, this is the best we got, and it's going to be 600 KB. At 1000 KB, it would be 1 megabyte. So it's still under 1 megabyte. And if this image is going to be so big that it's going to mostly fill the page, which at 2500 it will, then maybe that's fine that it's 600, because how many more images are you going to have in a page if this one already fills the page, right? So by looking at it that way, you're probably good. So now we're going to say X. And by the way, you could make more at the same time. We're not going to do it, but I could say plus, and I could export 3 other versions at the same time. Right now, we're going to go with 1. I'm going to hit export. And over here, the important thing, since the original has the same name is you want to know on the file name, I want to know a bit of what I did to it. So I'm going to add to this name, I'm going to add, I'm going to say that I compressed it, and I'm going to say what quality I compressed it to. So first of all, it only has 2,500 pixels versus the original one. And then I'm going to add also that I went to 4 quality, right? And that's just for me to compare it and be able to be clear that if it has the same name, it's a different image. So I'm going to say save. And when I go to my bridge, then over here, I have my old one and my new one. And the only place I see the difference is over here in the file size. See how it still says 496 PPI? PPI becomes irrelevant when you're talking about printing it, but I have it reduced in pixels and reduced in size. Nothing is going to tell you how compressed it is. Only looking at the quality will you know. Other than you writing it down, you will never know what you compressed it to. I know class is over, so just really quickly, I want to show you before we continue that in the neural filters, now you understand when I went to Super Zoom, the choice of remove JPEG artifacts, right? That was that there, but that might have been one of the choices that smoothed it over. We'll see, but then there's one that's just JPEG artifacts removal. There's a neural filter that's all it does is JPEG artifacts removal. So if you have an image, had we brought in the one that's been saved out and that has artifacts on it, this one doesn't, but had we brought in the one that we just exported, we could put it through this and see how good of a job it does to remove artifacts and see what it comes out as. This one is the high version one. I would have to open.
It did a very good job. I did high, and there are no bands.
There's no banding on the one that went low.
No.
So great. So that now
Yep.
there's a way to kind of fix that a little bit. Okay.
And no glowing edges on the trees. It's
Pretty good.
I hadn't even thought about trying that until you.
Yeah, I just read your email, which is why I wanted to point this out and then play it around. Okay, so I just wanted to show you that. So what you would have to do now is you would probably go over here to Bridge, open up the one that maybe was smaller that you would have compressed to 1%, I don't know, and then do that to it and then see what would happen to that banding and see if it goes away. Ed said it did. You might want to try that out and post your results in Padlet. That would be great. Don't forget to show me a little bit of this export as. In this case, you could go to Bridge and show me next to each other, the 2 different, qualities. And yeah, just, play around with all of these different things that I've been showing you as far as exporting for print, for not print, for in, for out, and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to go right.
Way too much.
If you need to go, if you need to go, if you need to go for it. I'm going to just share for a second here that I'm going to add to the homework. I'm going to edit that I want you to guys try the different adjustment layer types and now play around with file image size for print and export as for JPEG compression. Go to
Why
neural
would you want?
filters. Hold on. Go to neural filters to fix the JPEG artifacts. And then actually before this, get a hold of a file with few pixels or low resolution, and then, or make it, go to image size, get rid of it, get it really small, and then use the neural filter called Super Zoom to enhance it. What I'd like to see, comparisons of Super Zoom quality with or without the sharpen and details, was it, or noise reduction on or off to compare quality. So if anyone wants to try that out, that would be really good to give me some comparisons and stuff like that. To enhance it. And I know, Ed, you like to do that kind of stuff. And yeah, I'd love to see the files for what you just showed me. All right. I'll check your email in a minute, but yeah, lossy or glossy or flossy, lossy, to lose something, lossy, like you lose quality, lossy. It's weird with an L, like in light. Okay. So good question. And then someone else wrote, you're referring to the pixels thing. I can't tell. Oh yeah. So you had said you can't see even, you'd have to go up to 500, but our eyes wouldn't do that, right? That's fake. Our eyes wouldn't go to 500. So in real life, we wouldn't see that if we couldn't zoom in. All right. So cool. I think, Ed, you were trying to say something when I was finishing up, or
No, oh, I'm sorry.
no. Go ahead.
Sure.
Tell me.
Okay, one thing about making these images bigger, the one place that it actually falls down is if you're doing people. It really doesn't do a good job. And even
Yeah.
with the detect face on, what happens is it makes the face better, but all the rest of the skin's bad. And you're just going, no.
Yeah, and I mean, they don't really know how you look, so there's a limit. We all look at a leaf and oh, it's a leaf, it's another leaf. But if it's our mom, we know it's not looking like our mom, so yeah. Now, if it's just a model that you don't know how they look like and they suddenly look a bit different, we wouldn't know much the difference. So yeah, but it depends on then how it looks, like you said, against the body and stuff. But yeah. All of this artificial intelligence breaks down when it comes to the details. Like it's still really bad. It's still bad at hands. It's still bad at things that
for
are
what it is,
perfect.
it does a good job.
And it's only the beginning, guys. It's only going to get better. It's only going to get better.
Diana, my view on it is that the AI that they're using to determine masking is actually fairly good.
Yeah.
The AI where you're doing gen fill, when you are removing and putting something else there.
I haven't had very good.
The
Only-
problem is that it's 1024 by 1024 resolution. So
on top of that,
if you do one of the extended crops where you put your trees over here, the trees that have been made are all fuzzy as hell. So if you print it out, it shows. If you're putting it on online, it probably won't, unless somebody starts, pixel peeking on it, you can't see it. But
digital art, it still works, but when it comes to print, you still need such a high quality that
photorealistic, it's not there. And
yeah. But I remember when I was at Brooks learning, paying and finishing a whole career in photography with negatives, and everyone was like, pshaw, digital images, pshaw, and then look at it. So I'm just saying it's a matter of time.
I've actually been shooting in film lately, so
that's
I'm
great.
going back.
I love it. I love it. Okay, guys. Bye, Vera. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Diane. Have a good weekend.
See you on Monday. Bye. You too.
Today, Thursday? No.